Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Fairfield Board of Education, May 9th, 2023 Board of Education meeting. If you could all, I'm going to call the meeting to order. With us this evening is Mrs. Vitale, Mrs. Gerber, Mrs. Guernsey, myself, Mrs. Jacobson, Superintendent Mr. Testani, Mr. Asa, Ms. Maxon-Kennelly, Mr. Peterson, and Mrs. Kelly. If everyone could please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And Mrs. Vitale, would you start us off this evening? Students, I'm so happy to see you got the memo. We were starting early this evening. Welcome, welcome. Okay, why don't you guys go ahead?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Aniket. I'm your senior representative from Ludlow. Speaking of being a senior, other than diligently studying, of course, it's an exciting time to be a senior because our prom is approaching on May 19th at the Italian Center of Stamford. June 8th is going to be Senior Awards Night, and June 12th is the day that we're all waiting for, graduation. Monday, May 22nd is going to be our last day of school before the senior experience begins, and there's going to be a big after-school yearbook signing, and I anticipate many tears. Pencils of Promise, last Friday, they held a spike ball tournament, which was incredibly popular given this beautiful spring weather that we've all been enjoying. And I know that at this Board of Ed, we tried to promote unity among the schools, but I do have to brag and mention that yesterday, Ludlow's softball team beat Ward 4-0. We'd like to especially thank Captain Elena Owie, who's actually in the audience, for captaining the team to the victory and being named a FCAC Scholar Athlete. Football and lacrosse player Aaron Field is also an FCAC Scholar Athlete this year. The Jazz Dinner Dance will be held this Friday, May 12th, as a fundraiser for our music program. We'd really encourage all members of the community to pop out, as they say, and support our decorated musicians. A cappella night is going to be May 15th next week when Aria and Close Harmony, our two a cappella groups, are going to have their annual end-of-year performance. They are spectacular. I highly suggest it. For the juniors, next Wednesday, May 17th, will be the National Honor Society induction and the Junior Book Award distribution. We look forward to honoring their scholastic accomplishments and passing the metaphorical torch from the outgoing seniors to the rising seniors. And since I believe this is the last Board of Ed meeting for student representatives, I'm going to get a little bit sentimental and thank the Fairfield community and Dr. Hatzis for this incredible opportunity. I've had nothing but a blast serving for the past 2 years, and it has been an honor serving Fairfield Ludlow.
Hi, how are you today? Firstly, we have the Next Generation Science Standard, the NGSS. This Friday, all the juniors will be taking this science test during their science classes. We'll see how that goes, but we have the junior prom. I'm sure it'll go great. Our science teachers are awesome. And then we also have the junior prom. Ludlow's junior prom will be held this Saturday, May 13th, at the FTC warehouse in downtown. We are a abhorrently huge class. I'm pretty sure we're like the largest anyone's ever seen. We're like 400 people. So, it'll be great. We also have class elections. Freshmen, sophomores, and juniors are invited to run in-class elections, which are going to be held May 24th. We're excited for another year of collaboration and leadership for our student governments. It's always very exciting. You get a little slice of mock democracy, so it's always very fun. People take it very seriously, and it's a great way to see people who might have those career ambitions really, start to take steps towards that direction. We also have the preschool. It's the last week. The adorable little children are going to be graduating. It's the Sandcastle graduation ceremony, and child development classes are having a blast working with them, and we're excited to see what the future holds for them. I personally work there, and I will tell you, we are so excited. Some of the kids are going off to kindergarten. It's very awesome. They're very tiny and so cute, and it's just very exciting. And then for Model UN, we also have Ludlow's Model UN team. It attended the Woodstock conference. Woodstock Academy Model UN conference. Congrats to all the students who won awards, including Eli Monsley, Aniket Martins, and for Best Delegate, we have Leah Barch for Outstanding Delegate, Ewan Dignan, and for Honorable Delegate, and also for Honorable Delegate. So congratulations to all of those. With Aniket spearheading, there's been a lot more conferences we've been able to attend. I unfortunately did not get to go. I was busy, but very awesome, very exciting. And thank you so much for this opportunity. I had a lot of fun this year. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, or year in general.
Good evening, I'm Mary, and we would like to congratulate our Fairfield Ward High School Drama Club for 3 successful performances of Fiddler on the Roof. Thank you to all our students and staff who were involved in this outstanding show.
Good evening, my name is Ida Mocharniuk. Our seniors are also looking forward to starting their senior experiences the week of the 22nd. We are excited to see all the culminating projects at our showcase in June.
Our AP students had their portfolio showcase in the main lobby today. All our artists are so talented, and it was a great opportunity for them to share all their hard work. I was very impressed by all my friends and classmates and what they've accomplished this year.
Just a quick add-on, I was walking through with bewilderment, and I was just complimenting every artist for whether it was photography or art. Like, they all put so much thought into it, and it was really cool to see that from an outside perspective. We are also very happy to announce that our ward baseball team beat Ludlow's baseball team by a lot. It was 8-2, so we'd like to congratulate our team. Go Mustangs.
We also would like to wish our girls and boys track team good luck at their meet tomorrow against Ludlow. Ida will be the captain at that meet, so we're going to be celebrating her as well since it's also their senior night. And congrats as well to our boys tennis team who also beat Ludlow recently.
In the coming month, we are also looking forward to junior prom Saturday, May 13th, and senior prom on Friday, May 19th.
On Friday, May 12th, we will be collaborating with the Fairfield Police Department, Fire Department, Bridgeport Hospital, and Fairfield Cares to promote our annual mock crash to the junior class. Spectators will witness a simulation of a rescue mission that includes a medical transport, arrest, and a death notification. The goal of this simulation is to prevent drunk driving.
We would also like to extend our sincere thank you one more time to our teachers, sports staff, and other counselors as they are recognized this week during Teacher Appreciation Week. Thank you. And a big congratulations to our senior valedictorian, Mary Ryan, and our salutatorian, Leah Amster. I don't know if she's here, but you guys make Ward so proud.
And finally, thank you to the Board of Education for an amazing year. We are so honored to represent Ward and had fun sharing our school's numerous accomplishments. In a true Ward spirit, we're now going to do the Ward acronym for you guys. Welcoming, academic, respectful, dynamic, and ethical.
Good evening. I've had a very few eventful weeks at the Walter Fitzgerald campus. We have recently welcomed 2 new staff members, Devon Tomlin, who is our new security officer, and Milton Petway, who is our restorative practices specialist. They have both received a very warm welcome from our staff and students, and they're helping to make our school happier and healthier. Students from several of our classes are continuing their project-based learning. Recently, we have extracted honey and beeswax from our beehives, and we're planning to process that into products such as candles, lip balms, and salves. Last week, we had experts come to help us plan and plant our garden, as well as a bee expert named Tammy Warsham, who did a post-mortem on our hives to see how we can improve them for next year, because they didn't quite survive through the winter. Additionally, our school psychologist, Mike Crane, has been advising his boys group in the construction of our outdoor classroom. Additionally, we've enjoyed having Holly, who is a therapy dog, come to our school every other week. Our students really love to see her, and it just makes everyone very happy. Our mentorship program with Geraldine Clater Magnet School is still going strong. Our trip a few weeks ago to their school was filled with learning as well as some arts and crafts, and we're planning to host them at our school before the end of the year. Our students have been working extremely hard to reach graduation, as one of the many privileges we get at Walter Fitzgerald is credit recovery through a software called Play-Doh, which is enabling our students to stay accountable for their work and regain credit that they may have missed at Ward or Ludlow. Lastly, we will be kicking off our Pride Month celebrations with a presentation from Tony Farello, who is a certified life coach and an advocate for transgender youth. We're very excited to hear his story and to hopefully gain broader perspectives onto what our peers may be experiencing. And I would just like to say, although this is my second meeting, I'm very happy to be representing our school, and thanks for having me.
Questions for comments from board members? Mr. Peterson.
I just want to say very quickly that I was able to attend both the plays at Ludlow and Ward, and they were both phenomenal. However, Ludlow had the advantage of Dr. Hatzis appearing up on stage, and I think it would go a long way toward equity between our schools if Mr. Cavanna might convince Mr. Fratt to put him up on stage next year.
I mean, maybe right now we can have a little, well taken. Mrs. Kelly.
I just wanted a quick shout out for the varsity Ludlow girls coach. On Monday, the girls were lucky enough to hand him his 400th career win.
Yay, congratulations. Anyone else? Mrs. Vitale.
Just want to thank you guys for joining us at each meeting, and we've said it before that you really are the highlight and the bright spot, and it's so exciting to hear all the things that are happening in our schools. So thank you for making the time. I know that you guys are busy with other things, activities and friends and work, so really appreciate your contribution to our meetings, and enjoy all the fun stuff that's coming your way in the coming weeks for graduations and proms and other events. And if we don't see you beforehand, have a happy summer, and we hope to see some of you at least next week. And good luck to those heading off to the next chapter. We no doubt that it's going to be successful for you all.
Mrs. Maxon-Kennelly.
I have two questions. The first, there were a couple of award recipients we didn't hear from, and I don't know if you know the answer to this, but it's been a bit of a buzz on Facebook, and I was wondering if you could tell us who won Assassins.
Actually, Assassins is currently going on. If you see teenagers running around the town with Nerf guns, I promise it's not the apocalypse. It's just a game that they're playing to win money. It's been intense. It's been physical. Friendships have been broken, and we eagerly await the final champions.
Many scared moms of Fairfield on the Facebook page. Just saying. So I too, go ahead. Oh, sorry.
I was just going to add that I'm currently playing Senior Assassin, and I advanced to the second round, so very thankful for that, but I'm kind of getting super anxious, and I don't know if I want to continue, so hopefully my assassin will just give me some money at the end of this week, and so I can just drop out.
And then I
had like that.
So thank you for that. I've actually been very curious. My second question is, we usually invite the seniors to let us know what their plans are for next year, and I don't think we've gotten that information yet. Am I wrong? So I don't know if the seniors could let us know what their plans are for next year.
I'm going to be headed upstate New York to Cornell University to study mechanical and aerospace engineering.
I'm going to Providence to Brown University to study public health and anthropology.
I'll be in Easton, Pennsylvania at Lafayette College, majoring in biology and running track.
I'm going to be right outside Asheville, North Carolina at Warren Wilson College studying environmental science.
Fabulous. Perfect segue, Mrs. Maxon-Kennelly, and I, too, thank you so much for being here and the joy that you bring to our meetings. and sharing your competitive and fun. And Zoe, it's been just wonderful to have you join. And I'm so grateful that you're able to, at least even if it was for the last couple of minutes. But with that, we do have a little gift for you that maybe you can take on your travels with you. So I'm just going to, we have some thank you FPS water bottles for you. So I'll hand those out. Okay. With that, we have public comment. Are there any members of the public who would like to make public comment at this time? Before you do that, you guys, thank you so much for being here. Looks like you don't want to stay.
Wait, could we get a picture of them? Let's get.
Sure. Yes. James, do you mind, since being our Mrs. Brown fill-in this evening?
Go ahead, Jen. Mike.
Have a great rest of your year, guys. Thank you. Thank you. All right, back to public comment. If anyone would like to come forward, you can do so at this time.
Hi, I'm sorry about this transition because they are lovely, and I am here to talk about the ELA curriculum. So please bear with me for a second. My name is Michelle Walker, 127 Blue Ridge Road. I'm here as a parent of a second grader, fourth grader, both at McKinley, and a 5-year-old who will be heading to McKinley for kindergarten this fall. And I'm continuing to reach out just about some concerns I have about the scripted curriculum that we seem to be moving forward with. I understand, unlike most of our surrounding districts who applied for waivers, we're going with Houghton Mifflin's Into Reading as the primary resource for the ELA revision process. And after the last meeting, it sounds like primary resource is 90% of the scripted curriculum. And I might have misheard that, but I'm pretty sure I heard up to 90% of that curriculum will be what my kids are experiencing in the 24-25 year. I remain against the use of a scripted curriculum for our ELA program. I also had that problem when TC was the curriculum at the moment. I support the work of refining our existing curriculum so that all of the components of Scarborough's Rope, which Dr. Gillis reviewed at the last meeting, are embedded in the Fairfield curriculum. I believe the use of any boxed curriculum limits teacher agency, teacher flexibility to respond to individual needs, and diverse voices in the classroom. We have experienced teachers in our district whose expertise with our population needs to be included in curriculum work. At the April meeting, Ms. Goss addressed the issue of teacher autonomy and assured board members that there would be flexibility in the curriculum, and I'm really hoping that is true. What worries me is that as soon as the word flexibility was said, the need for consistency was like immediately stressed, and that struck me as confusing. Personally, I believe that teaching is an art form. It doesn't come in an expensive package. It is grown through development, practice, reflection, and revision. Publishers have the most to gain from this expensive state mandate, not schools. I'm asking the board to continue to fight for teacher autonomy, student voice, and flexibility in our schools tonight. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? No? All right. Oh, one more? Okay, sure. And you just have to press the button and hold it. And, yes,
I've
sure.
never done this before. Hi, Liz Franco, 291 Barlow Road. Watching my son grow into a reader and writer over the last 2 years has been a joy. I'm so grateful for his teacher's ability to provide the feedback and tools he needs to continually outgrow himself. But I now worry about the learning experiences that lie ahead. And still, I remain hopeful that the classroom will continue to be a space filled with joy, independence, and risk-taking, where productive struggle is encouraged and approximations are celebrated. In the midst of Teacher Appreciation Week, I want to thank all teachers for showing up to do a superhuman job, one that is impossible to do perfectly, and yet rise to that challenge every day. To simplify reading instruction into buckets of what does and does not work, or what teachers should or should not do, is a disservice to children who don't fit into a mold, and a disservice to the depth of knowledge and expertise teachers bring to this profession. Regardless of this or that program, Fairfield students deserve a curriculum that allows teachers the flexibility required to meet the diverse range of needs and passions of each child in front of them. If you study the lesson flow and procedures laid out by Interreading's modules, you'll quickly realize that this program is rigid by design. And so holding on to 85 to 90% of it, as reported at the last meeting, will create a curriculum that fails to bend enough for Fairfield's population of learners. Copying 85 to 90% of a packaged program lacks scope, creativity, and responsiveness. This is not backwards curriculum design. If you're compelled by your close review of this program's basal approach, or if you're simply pressured by the complete lack of viable options, I urge you to demand that the curriculum developed using Interreading is not a 90% copy-paste job, and that the program is adjusted as needed to ensure the things Fairfield teachers value are deeply rooted. At the November 15th board meeting, Ms. Goss highlighted 3 of those values, quote, writing process, rigor, and student choice in terms of texts. To make one final and important point, Interreading is not a writing program. To use the 20-minute writing component tacked on to this reading program so that it checked a marketing box would be a foolish choice. Whole class, lockstep, product-driven writing assignments will not inspire the next generation of thinkers and writers. It will deliver the message that we write to answer a prompt, that we write to fill in the blanks on a worksheet, that we write to describe a topic a lesson plan assigns us. Fairfield kids are taught to write about the topics that matter to them, about the experiences they've lived, about the opinions they hold. They fill pages and pages to craft stories, research-based essays, persuasive letters, and poetry. Why would we take that away? Nobody in this room wants a child to fall behind.
I'm sorry, Ms. Franco, time is up.
We're all here rooting for the
Thank
same
you.
cause. We all want all kids to excel. Thank you.
Hello, Mick McGarry, teacher, English teacher at Ward High School and president-elect of the FEA. I just wanted to talk briefly about the vote you're going to take tonight on the policy about trade books. Specifically, we'd just like to make sure the previous speakers, speaking about autonomy and teacher creativity and choice, is so incredibly important to teachers at all levels. So whatever language you choose to adopt, please keep that in mind. We'd also like to speak to the idea of adding trade books outside of the curriculum cycle. That it'd be clear that there is a process for that would also include teacher input during that process. And that it'd be clear also that what is the process for removing a book, because we wouldn't want books to be removed at like one simple complaint or something like that. But there'd be a clear process that would include teacher input for removing or adding any trade books. Thank you.
Gina Dignan, 58 Clinton Street. I'm here today to voice my concerns over the proposed adoption of HMH into reading. My concerns are not with our district's attempts to align our reading instruction to the body of research known as the science of reading. One of my main concerns is that our district leadership has failed to engage the staff, principals, and LAS group in authentic and collaborative ways and have adopted a leadership style that mirrors the top-down style of the state. This can be seen by the fact that they have chosen not to review instructional programs and practices that are in place and having success before trying to replace them. The chosen approach is not only highly irregular in the field of education, it is disrespectful to the educators and administrators who are working day in and day out to meet the needs of the students in front of them. If I had not spent the last 4 years working alongside some of the educators and administrators in this district, I would be led to believe by the narrative district leadership has publicly stated over and over again that nothing teachers are currently doing is aligned with the science of reading. And further, by utilizing programs not mandated by the state, they may be doing harm to children because they are not teaching with a structured literacy approach. This narrative is not only reckless, it is inaccurate. Unfortunately, the general public will never know what is happening in our elementary schools in terms of ELA instruction, or the shifts that teachers have already made and what is working well, because our district leadership has deliberately chosen the path that has gotten us here to this vote today. Another genuine concern I have is the narrow focus of the science of reading, as if that is the only lens we should utilize when reviewing, developing, and implementing curriculum. There are large bodies of research and education focusing on executive function, engagement, motivation, cultural responsiveness, identity work, and feedback. Will these lenses guide any of the curriculum development? Our district publicly states as part of our published core values that we want students to acknowledge, explore, and value the importance of diversity and demonstrate strong motivational persistence to learn. How are curricular materials that are so scaffolded, linear, and repetitive going to foster and develop these core values in our students? I urge this board to either vote no, or if you feel obligated to comply with state mandates, insist on a staggered rollout to ensure that the curriculum is developed and implemented well, allowing more teachers' voices to be amplified because they are our primary resources, not materials. District improvement plans aren't written on stone tablets. They can be adapted. In addition, please insist that writing continue to be taught as its own subject in the elementary grades, retaining its instructional minutes. The act is called the Right to Read Act, not the Right to Write Act. In closing, I would like to take this opportunity to publicly thank all teachers in our community, especially those who have made sure that my own kids were and are seen, supported, and challenged. My hope is that you will continue to have the autonomy to respond to students' needs like you have done and continue to do for my kids each and every day. I am grateful for your partnership. Thank you.
Somebody else timing? Sorry. Thank you. Sorry. Anyone else? Okay. Moving on. Recognitions of Excellence, our first group. We have several groups here tonight to be celebrated this evening with us. And first up is going to be our Fairfield Ludlow High School Future Business Leaders of America students. Mr. Testani?
The Future Business Leaders of America is the largest business, career, and technical student organization in the world. This year, the FBLA Fairfield Ludlow chapter had 9 students compete at the state level. 6 students placed in one of the top 5 spots. 1 student received the Who's Who Leadership Award, and 4 students qualified for the national competition taking place in Atlanta this summer. Please join me in celebrating our FBLA students at this time. Please step forward. William DiPiano, Tian Yao, Amber Lynn, Farah Coaster, Jack Vias, Laura Rosa, Scott Master, and Michael and Nicholas Ciavarini. Congratulations.
Congratulations to you all, and to those who couldn't be here tonight, please extend our warm congratulations to everyone. Moving on next, we have the Fairfield Ward High School Distributive Education Clubs of America, or otherwise known as DECA.
DECA is an organization that prepares emerging leaders and entrepreneurs in the field of business, marketing, finance, and entrepreneurship in high schools and colleges across the globe. At the State Career Development Conference this year, the Fairfield Ward DECA team had 2 first-place winners, 2 students in the top 5 spots, 5 students placed in the top 5 for the state, and 1 student who was awarded a DECA State Scholarship. Qualifying DECA students also moved on to compete in the International Career Development Conference in Orlando. This, the first year of DECA at Ward. Congratulations. So please join me as we recognize these amazing Fairfield Ward DECA students at this time. Catherine Foley, Aurora Carell, Ellie Melson, Eleni Gold, Adara Balan, John Bucic, Amelia Johnson, Luca Anello, Carolyn Buck, Adam Horwitz, Alexandra Jeremiah Kafadar, Amelia King, and Reed Rogers Hope.
Congratulations to you all. Next, we have our valedictorians and salutatorians. Mr. Testani.
First up, Fairfield Ward High School, salutatorian. I'd like to acknowledge Leah Amster. Leah has truly stood out for her independence, dedication, intellectual curiosity, and her kind and caring personality. Leah enjoys all areas of study but has a passion for math and science and is hoping to pursue a major in the STEM field. No matter what path Leah ultimately chooses, she has the drive, determination, and intellectual curiosity to be successful. In addition to taking 6 AP courses this year alone, Leah was named a National Merit Commended Scholar. Outside of the classroom, Leah's true passion is playing soccer, and she serves as a mentor and leader for children throughout her work at Wakeman Club. We wish Leah the best of luck in the fall as she continues her academic career at Vanderbilt University. as everyone was made aware earlier, this year's Fairfield Ward High School valedictorian is Mary Ryan. Mary is a student athlete who has proven that she can excel at the highest level courses, compete at an elite athletic level, and be involved in her school and local community. She has consistently worked hard and enrolled some of the most difficult AP and honors courses offered. Currently, Mary is planning to major in anthropology and a concentration in medical anthropology on a pre-med track. She hopes to become a psychiatrist who studies mental health. Mary's achievements continue to shine outside the classroom, including a program which she developed to provide swimming lessons to underprivileged children. We wish Mary the best of luck in the fall as she continues her academic career at Brown University.
We are checking because we're missing the ward ones, but for now, we will definitely take your picture. Okay.
This year's Fairfield Ludlow co-salutatorians, we have two. We'll start with the first salutatorian is Karit Danjal. Karit has put his heart and soul into his education. Throughout the past 4 years, Karit has taken 9 AP courses while maintaining involvement in his community and continuing to be an empathetic peer and role model. He has always known he wanted to go into the medical field and took a course to become an EMT. He has also had an opportunity to intern and shadow physicians, giving him hands-on experience that further showcased his ability to be compassionate to patients. Additionally, he participates in a variety of clubs, such as Ludlow Science Bowl, the Debate Club, Cycling Team, and Make-A-Wish Club. We wish him the best of luck in the fall as he attends Union College. Our other co-salutatorian at Fairfield Ludlow High School for this year is Nathaniel Thompson. Nathaniel has challenged himself by following a rigorous and demanding sequence of honors and advanced placement classes throughout his high school career. While Nate's academic strength reaches across all disciplines, he is particularly interested in math. He is a member of a small cohort of students who entered high school having skipped 2 grade levels in the math curriculum, culminating in multivariable calculus his senior year. Nate is also a valued member of the Math Honor Society. Last year, Nate was the recipient of the Harvard Book Award, and he was named the National Merit semifinalist. He aspires to see the world and has written about traveling to Antarctica, driving to the Pan American Highway, and visiting Japan. We wish him the best of luck in the fall as he continues his academic career at the University of Connecticut. This year's Fairfield Ludlow High School valedictorian is Elena Ohi. Elena is a diligent, committed, and independent student who has excelled in challenging AP and honors courses throughout her high school career. In addition to academic achievement, she is a standout performer on the softball team and was recognized as an all-FCAC player. Elena is an active community member, having participated in the Key Club, Circle of Friends Club, Math Honor Society, History Honor Society, Science Honor Society, Latin Honor Society, and National Honor Society. She is also a gifted writer and artist and was awarded the Yale Book Prize, among many other prestigious awards. We wish her the best of luck in the fall as she continues her academic career at Yale University.
Congratulations, everyone, again. So proud of you, and well wishes next year with all of your adventures and journeys to come. Let us know how you do in the future. We would love to hear from you all. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight. Okay, everybody. On to old business. Did you have some? Do you still need a recess or? No. Okay. Old business, item 6A, adoption of English language arts resource. Two motions here. Adoption of World of Wonders, recommended motion that the Board of Education adopt World of Wonders as a core English language resource for pre-kindergarten. Can I get a motion, please? Mrs. Maxon Kennelly, seconded by Mr. Peterson. Discussion? Mrs. Guernsey?
I want to thank the administrators and teachers who put so much effort into researching these resources. And I know how important this is to our preschool teachers. And while I will be supporting this motion tonight, it's with hesitation. I do have concerns about the lack of cultural responsiveness in some of the materials. So I hope that if this passes, that's something that our administrators will work hard to supplement and correct where needed. Thank you.
Mrs. Kelly?
Hi. I also will be supporting it, but I also have reservations. Some of my biggest reservations on, well, it's actually probably more on A2, but it would really all apply to, do you want me to wait, or I can just, okay. My biggest, one of my biggest objections to this is really that I just hate the legislation that's kind of forcing our hand on this. The interpretation, my interpretation of the legislation is yet this is another state overreach that has added the added drawback of being a very expensive unfunded mandate. And I hate everything about that. It reads to me that it should be targeting failing school districts, which Fairfield Public Schools is clearly not, and that the waiver process seems like it was designed exactly for districts like Fairfield, but we chose not to partake in that, and the recent Q&A document indicated that that window has closed. So given that we are now in a position of really only having one choice, which is to vote for one of the 7 state programs, I am in no position myself, knowing the limits of my own abilities, to doubt what our very capable administration has chosen from the programs. So I have no reason to doubt that they picked the one that they felt was right for Fairfield, of the ones that the state is requiring us to get. I don't want to sound like I'm 100% negative about this. We know no program is going to be perfect. That includes the one that we currently have in place. Our current curriculum has been tweaked. There's been no significant update in over a decade. We hear often, especially with respect to the budget, that there is an increased need for intervention in our elementary schools. I have no doubt that these interventions are both vital and effective. That being said, I am cautiously optimistic that a new curriculum approach, coupled with the work of the Early Literacy Academy, may help reduce the need for interventions without compromising goals or lowering the bar. So again, I'm reluctant to do this. We've been assured, it's a Herculean task. We've been assured by administration and Ms. Goss that they are ready to hit the ground running. They will be ready. I don't envy the work that lies ahead of you, but it is with reluctance. And again, I just want to reiterate that I cannot stand that I feel like it is an overreach, and that does not sit well with me. But given that we are charged now with approving one of these 7, I will approve it. Of course.
All encompassing. So I just want to say good evening, board members. I prepared a brief statement, and I think it's important that it's. I feel it's my duty as superintendent to express my perspective on the work that's been done by our ELA committee. Over the past 6 months, Janine Goss has led a committee of extremely hardworking teachers and administrators to evaluate ELA resources to present to the board for approval tonight. They have spent countless hours reviewing and scrutinizing material, traveling to other districts in and out of state to gather information to make a well-informed decision on a resource to present for approval prior to beginning the curriculum writing process. This process has been nothing but thorough and inclusive of teachers and administrators. While I understand that change can be difficult, we must always strive for continuous growth and improvement across our profession and in our district. There are many misconceptions that continue to pop up and must be put to rest once and for all. The district is going to adopt a comprehensive literacy program. This includes reading and writing. There will be robust writing embedded throughout our new curriculum, and it is also clearly spelled out in the materials from Into Reading. There's no evidence to support that a resource will be lacking, that we will be using will lack writing. Students will be writing for authentic audiences and purposes and will involve students in focused and scaffolded writing experiences. It is also said that students will lose the opportunity to read text on their level and have no choice. That idea, again, has no merit. The idea that everyone will read the same text and not be challenged is, again, not accurate. There will be consistency of text used during whole group instruction. However, our students will have access to over 1,100 books, and in grades 3 to 5, students can choose from a list of 1,000+ novels for novel study. Our new curriculum will have all the components of what we currently use in our teaching and learning, plus a lot more. I have also heard from folks that there's a fear of students losing the joy of reading. Students who currently love to read will continue to find enjoyment and pleasure as they lose themselves in books they love to read. Our goal is to support those students who struggle to read so they can experience that same joy of reading as their peers. I have a hard time accepting that adopting a program will diminish academic achievement based on nothing more than assumptions. I strongly support the work Janine and the team has done over the past 6 months. They have been nothing but exceptional in demonstrating an intentional and thorough process in the evaluation of resources. Again, I understand change is hard, and especially hard to embrace the unknown when there isn't a clear understanding of what the possibilities of success can be. A resource will provide all teachers with the tools they need to provide all students with high-quality teaching and learning in every classroom across the Fairfield Public Schools. Our district improvement plan approved a year ago explicitly says that our ELA curriculum will have consistent resources and resources and text, a common assessment per unit, and consistent learning plan and assured experiences. The ELA curriculum will take a structured and explicit approach to instruction and assessment while allowing for teachers to respond to the needs of their individual students. We need to move forward with curriculum writing if we are going to present the new curriculum for board approval as expected in December. Tonight is just the first step in that process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Testani. Anyone else on Wonders? Mrs. Ritelli?
Hi, thanks. I just wanted to say that although I do agree with Ms. Kelly's frustration with the state and the overreach, I will be supporting this. I also want to recognize the tremendous amount of work that our district leadership has put into this. And Ms. Goss, thank you for taking the time to answer all my questions. We've had many conversations. I think that this has been very well vetted. I am also extremely grateful to Dr. Gillis at Literacy How for partnering with Fairfield Public Schools. I think the role we've taken with the Early Literacy Academy and bringing all of that professional development to our staff at Fairfield is so amazing. And I was beyond impressed that she participated in your presentation at our last meeting. So I really want to thank her, a nationally recognized literacy expert, for really putting in the work with you so closely for our children. And it brings me, a parent of a child with a reading disability and a child who has excelled in reading, a tremendous amount of confidence and comfort in the route that we're taking going forward. And so I just wanted to say thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, take it to the public for public comment. Just is only on wonders at this point. No public comment? Okay, back to the board. All in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Okay, on to our next motion, adoption of Interreading, that the Board of Education adopt Interreading as a core English language arts resource for kindergarten to grade 5. Can I get a motion, please? Mr. Peterson, seconded by Mrs. Rotelli. Discussion by the board. Mrs. Guernsey.
There are a couple of issues with this resource that I have, in addition to the concerns that I share with both Ms. Kelly and Ms. Rotelli about the state overreach component. I'm concerned about the process. I'm concerned about the lack of compelling data regarding student success in districts that are similar in any way to our own. I'm concerned about the boxed curriculum itself and the inflexible nature of it, even though I know we would work towards this 10% of flexibility, or I'm not sure whatever the percentage is. That is concerning to me. And I am extremely concerned about the lack of cultural responsiveness in the curriculum that I've read about more recently. So I will not be supporting this resource. I do appreciate all the effort that went into this. I mean, I recognize the difficult situation we're in, so it's not that I don't appreciate that, but I will not be supporting this or the expenses associated with it.
Anyone else? Mrs. Vitale.
Some of the frustration about that I feel like we've been put in this situation by the legislation. I do see the value of, adding to our instruction in terms of phonics and some of the science of reading that had been missing. I saw it with my own, I have 3 children. My youngest has special needs. I taught him to read before he even started school in terms of decoding, using some of the methodology that's put forth in this curriculum. I will be supporting the curriculum tonight, but I just want to take this opportunity really to recognize the great work that is being done in our classrooms currently, that we have started taking movements to a more integrity and changing our reading instruction. So bringing on Dr. Gillis, started with the Early Literacy Academy that, a couple of years ago, the vision was to expand the professional development based on the work that was being done in the Early Literacy Academy across all of our elementary schools. So I understand some of the frustration and fears that we're hearing from our staff about this change, and adopting something that is out of the box. And I've shared with this board in terms of the importance of teacher autonomy, especially at the elementary school level where kids are coming at different levels, different developmentally in terms of executive functioning and socially. There's a lot going on in the elementary school classroom. So I do appreciate that we are now providing them with a resource, which we have gotten feedback that they do need, which is part of the reason I will be supporting this. I have concerns about that 90% threshold. I still don't really have a feel for what the instruction is going to look like in the classroom right now, and I appreciate that part of that will be coming with the curriculum work. So I forget which public speaker spoke to that. I would ask, just as it moves forward, to be getting updates, because I understand the concern shared that we've been hearing. By the same token, I thank the administration for all the work and the research that has been done to trying to find the best resource, moving forward. But, I'm not sure if we would have been where we are right now if not for the legislation. And I think that my feelings on this, a little bit torn. So just would ask, if this passes tonight, just to Mr. Testani, just to, bring us along a little bit as the professional development goes. We've been in past situations where something gets approved and we think it's going to end up in one place, and the steps along the way don't exactly go as planned. So just want to prevent that from happening with this, because it is so important. So many people have put so much time into it and are dedicated to our kids learning to read.
I completely understand. I think there's this idea that 90% of what's included in the program is outside of what currently is being implemented. I think when they say 90%, a lot of what we currently do is embedded in that 90%. So I think it's kind of hard to say we're going to shift and it's going to be 10% of what we currently do and 90% new. I venture to say that is completely not accurate, that it would be probably more like 50-50. I'm not going to give just a percentage, but included in that 90% is a lot of what we currently do. So I think a lot of the fears that people have are just of the unknown. I think with proper professional development, and people are going to understand that this is going to help them become more equipped to handle the challenges, because we hear a lot about, I think it was mentioned, all the challenges that we have, the intervention. We are spending a lot of money. Let's remember, I'm going to bring this to the table, and I'm not looking to eliminate staff, but at every elementary school, we have 2 staff members dedicated for language arts support. 2 at every elementary school. If our core instruction was not providing everything to all children, we wouldn't need 2. I think that's a lot of staffing, and I think we need to be cognizant of that, because we're talking about one expense, but we already see it on the back end, and then we also see it in the related services end too. So I just think everyone needs to just let the process continue to develop, and I know the team will provide in December a curriculum that will serve all children well here in Fairfield. That is our mission, that is our charge, and that is what I believe that is our responsibility, to serve all children well, no matter where they fall on the achievement spectrum.
Mr. Peterson?
Thank you. I had actually written a great deal to say tonight. I'm looking at the line saying Zeno declaiming in the Stoa, which is going to sound very strange out of context. I want to offer my full-throated support for the administration's effort in this. I appreciate the extreme amount of work that's gone into both thinking about the curriculum and evaluating the resources that we are trying to decide between. Unlike Ms. Vitale, I believe that I would hope that even without state intervention, we would be here. We have a 10-year-old reading curriculum that is not aligned with what we know to be the current science of reading, current best practices. We know that. We know that. And I think teachers have done an excellent job as our knowledge about reading instruction has developed to try to adapt our curriculum to that purpose. But we would have needed to do this anyway. We would absolutely have needed to do this anyway. And, to the interventions point, this is the thing that I keep thinking about. According to spring 22 STAR assessment in second grade, a grade that we're targeting 100% grade level or above reading at, we were only at 74.4%. Is that a number that we're supposed to celebrate? I think we can do better. I think we're taking concrete steps to do better. I think the teachers are rolling up their sleeves and trying to figure out ways to get this number up. That 100% that we have in the DIP is an aspirational goal to be sure, and we may never reach it. But we are leaving a lot of kids behind right now, and it's following them like a millstone through their education. In our current educational system, reading is the sine qua non. It is the thing without which there is nothing. We can do better. This is a concrete step moving us toward doing better for everybody.
Mrs. Vitale.
And just because I was mentioned, I want to be clear that I'm not saying that I was supporting that we would not be making changes into our language arts curriculum, that we know that we are moving forward on this. That comment was really just in terms of, the state gave us a finite list of choosing from and a timeline of, whether or not we're going to do the waiver, if we're going to accept one of them. The timeline, I think that we were just kind of put into a little bit, and that was really that was the only comment. It was not necessarily saying that we were not going to take steps, because clearly we were. We passed a district improvement plan, which we all got behind, and we knew that we needed to take concrete steps to get our kids reading at grade level by the end of second grade.
To clarify my comments, I want this work to begin as quickly as possible. I don't think we can afford to leave kids behind. I think that we need to act with dispatch.
Mrs. Maxon Kennelly.
Yeah, thank you. I just echo Mr. Peterson's comments, delivered far more articulately than what mine are about to be. I'm a little bit scattered. First, I do want to thank staff, especially Ms. Goss, for what had to have been hours of work of answering all of our questions. It was a very thorough second vetting of the curriculum for the board to see. And in concert with that, I want to thank my fellow board members for all of their questions, because many of those questions were things I hadn't thought of. The answers were very enlightening and only served to increase my level of support, if that's possible, for the direction we are going. And I do appreciate the letters we have received. I do appreciate that those letter writers also showed up here in person to reconfirm their views, even as I don't completely agree with them. That level of engagement is so valuable for all of our work here at the board level. But it's just, when I think of, that 100% at grade level in second grade in the district improvement plan stood out to me more than anything else in that whole plan. And for us to vote for that, we have to then go with what our administration is supporting as the means to achieving that, because that same administration, obviously, while yes, it's aspirational, no doubt about it, they're telling us this is the tool that is going to get us there. And I'm a high school English teacher. I don't feel qualified to evaluate elementary school materials, but I do appreciate that this is going to be an incredibly valuable tool for getting us there. And when we describe something as being out of the box, I think that's putting a nice negative connotation on that phrase. In fact, what it is a tremendous supply of resources, which one of our own teachers explicitly said to us at the presentation of how incredibly valuable that is to her. And as we in policy are talking about the striving for consistency in a grading policy, how can we then denigrate the consistency that this curriculum will supply? Our students should know that they could move from one classroom to another within a building or to a different building and be assured of the same content and skills across Fairfield Public Schools. There should be no school that is doing it better, at least in terms of what is within our control. No question that there is an art to teaching, and those teachers are still going to have so much latitude for creativity within this. And I'm going to be overly simplistic here because I'm not an elementary school teacher, but how you teach the long I sound in a vowel, how you teach some of the phonemic combinations of letters. How you do that, while yes, this will be supplied, there are so many creative ways to come at that, especially when that teacher senses within the class that there are some students who aren't getting it. That's when your creativity has to kick into overdrive. How do you reach those students? So this idea, there's plenty of teacher autonomy, but it is going to be directed toward a common goal in every grade that every student moving from one grade to the next is going to be prepared for. At least that, again, of course, is the goal. And so for me, this is a very exciting time. I obviously have spoken in the past with great emotion regarding the state requiring something of us and it being unfunded. One, I'm very pleased that we have gotten a grant for this, so the state is putting some money behind this mandate. And secondly, in the previous time when I strenuously objected, it was because the curriculum was forced on us. In this case, we've simply been told, follow the science. This science of reading science and data is decades old, and Connecticut was not following it. Fairfield was not following it. We were following an incredibly flawed and damaging method of literacy. And only at a glacial pace was that starting to change, and it was hurting kids. So in this one regard, I'm going to have to push back on that resentment towards Hartford, which normally I'm ready to jump in the pool on a bit. But on this, they were actually looking out for kids better than many of our districts were. And it's not a way that's pleasant. No one likes to be told what to do. All of us believe we're trying to serve our kids well. We weren't. And I could not agree with Mr. Peterson more. I think 76% is something not to be proud of. That means there are a lot of kids doing well, but almost 24, a quarter of our kids, not at grade level? How is that not horrifying? Another thing about the science of reading and that this approach in general, and which I'm trusting this resource will supply, right up there with that 100% at second grade, at reading at second grade level, is our focus on the achievement gap. This is a means to addressing the achievement gap with not only the assured skills, but the assured content as science and social studies contribute to this is very exciting. That students who lack certain background knowledge, that is going to be addressed as part of this. And so when we talk about, yes, everyone's covering this content, good that they are, because we can't assume all our kids have it, and those kids who do have some of this are only going to be exciting to go deeper in on topics. Again, I'm not saying this is perfect, and that's why we know that the work that's going to begin May 30th, assuming we approve this tonight, is so important in terms of how they're going to make it work for Fairfield and all of the teachers who are going to have the say in that. And I just, really look forward to this. I have other comments to make, but I think I'll just wrap it up there by saying thank you for all the work. Very eager to hear that, that this professional development, when it gets off the ground next January, I am hoping we as a board get feedback on that because that's everything. We have already seen a recent curriculum roll out with extremely ineffective professional development. So I hope that this is in person. I hope that there are consistent checks that it is effective and meeting the teachers where they are, because they're not going to have a consistent comfort level with what we're asking them to do. And everything is riding on that professional development so that teachers in September are empowered and confident to take this and run with it. So thank you, again, staff, for all of your work. Thank you for all the comments we've received, and I look forward to this moving forward.
Mrs. Gerber.
Yeah, thank you. So I will not be voting in favor of this for a number of different reasons, and I'm not happy that I'm not voting for it. I don't know if I've ever voted against something like this in the past, except I would just say that normally we have the curriculum presented to us first, and then we have the materials afterwards. I don't know what this curriculum is going to look like, and that concerns me. The process concerns me. I'm also worried that we perhaps haven't really looked into the progress that may have already started, brought about by changes that have already been implemented in elementary classrooms. I'm worried about the rigidity of the program, and I'm not really clear exactly what the efficacy of this program is. When we were getting the presentation at our last meeting, you know, on the one hand, these are really bright and shiny and pretty books and everything like that, but it really was more of a sales pitch to me than a curriculum presentation. And I understand that this wasn't a curriculum that's being presented to us, but we keep talking about things interchangeably, program, curriculum. I'm still not clear what Fairfielding is going to look like. And while I fully acknowledge that there are obviously things that need to be changed in our English language arts curriculum, and we were certainly due for that change, and we had started to make those changes, I'm just worried that now the pendulum is just going to swing too far in the other direction. And so with that in mind, and not for nothing, but the cost is certainly concerning to me as well. This is a lot of money when I don't really understand exactly what this program is. I've spent a lot of time going through the website, looking at all the different grades. I'm not a teacher, so obviously I'm not at as much of an advantage as some may be, but I really still don't understand exactly what this program is going to be, except that it seems that it's fairly rigid. And I'm just not sure that the teachers will have the ability to really make it their own, and that concerns me.
All right, anyone else? No, okay. I'm going to ask a couple follow-up questions, not many, just a couple. One question I had submitted that board members probably saw was in regard to implementation, the elementary schedule in terms of the time, and I admit that most of my questions, Ms. Gaz is going to probably come in November, December when we're talking more about implementation, because that is around some of my concerns, but just to get some thoughts out ahead of time as you head into that process. I had asked a question about the elementary schedule, and I just wanted to reiterate that none of the other areas like art, music, social studies, science, et cetera, will be losing any time with the implementation of this program.
We absolutely do not anticipate any of the other subject areas losing any time.
Okay, thank you for that. The other question that I have on this point is, and I thank Mr. Testani for his statement earlier about the differentiation that you're going to be building into this. And just to put my mind at ease, and maybe some people in the audience, as Mrs. Maxon Kennelly and others have stated, we have a very diverse learners in this district and within each classroom. So the terms around being scripted and controlled text and things like that, it is an assurance that when materials come to us in the fall, that we will be able to see that all levels of learners, wherever they may be, will be challenged in the classroom and not held back, for lack of a better word, to put before you right now in terms of being able to advance at their own pace outside of what the majority or even other subgroup populations will be using.
So the whole idea of us purchasing these resources, yes, it comes in a box and it is called a program. We will be using them as resources. The whole idea behind that is that the resources being provided are for every student. So there are resources for students with disabilities, with diverse learning needs. There are resources to support our English language learners. There are resources in there to support our learners who are advanced. This program has put in resources to reach each and every child, and this is something our teachers absolutely need. They need easy access to materials for all kinds of learners.
Okay, so the answer is yes. When they come in the fall, we will see differentiation, flexibility, agency, and choice available to our kids.
There has to be.
Okay.
Our curriculum that we're writing is a framework. Teachers still have to lesson plan from that framework to meet the needs of each and every child.
Okay. And then the last question I'm going to ask, and then I'll be done and sum up, is the writing piece. And not saying that Writer's Workshop is perfect by any stretch, and I understand that you might change things as you go into this writing process. But if you could just speak to if that will dramatically change, or do you anticipate, based on feedback from teachers and building principals, that not the new writer's workshop, because they call it that too, but the way that we are doing things now, where there is creativity, where there is choice. They're not just responding to prompts or something in a workbook or whatnot, but color outside the lines, if you will.
Okay, so it's a gradual release model. Students will be doing written response to text as well as going through the process as they do now, from drafting all the way through publication. It should be very comparable to what we are doing. There may be some nuances that are different. They will write daily. They will choose topics. So even if, let's say, the summative task at the end of this unit is on an opinion essay, well, they choose the topic they are providing the opinion about, and so on and so forth. So they set their own writing goals. They confer regularly with their peers as well as their teachers. This is something that they do now. There will be multiple pieces of writing each week with a larger piece that occurs at the very end of the module. And this is all done in tandem. The reading and the writing is done in tandem, and the research that they do in the reading is informing the work that they're doing in the writing. So they are going to accomplish pieces in all three writing types, as well as lots of subgenres. So if anything, I think it is actually expanding the opportunities for our students in the area of writing. I believe it's robust.
Did you have a follow-up, Mr. Peterson?
Yes, if you're
Sure,
done.
of course.
How important is it for a child learning to write to first be a good reader?
You do have to read lots and lots in order to inform the work that you do as a writer. In fact, writing helps to clarify what you read. And so again, we do these in tandem, and we make sure that, again, when we look at the resources, they are specially developed so that you have text sets around that theme, around that content, so that students have access to many different models in order to inform their writing.
Okay, those are just some of the few questions I wanted to get some answers to this evening. And I thank you very much for spending the time and answering all of our questions. I know it was a lot, and I appreciate the time that you took on that. So that's it that I have for you, but my other comments are that I share some of the concerns that were expressed about the state in this. I have very deeply held concerns about things like this because, in previous iterations I've stated that it's okay when you like it, but one day when you don't, and it looks something a little bit different that other people are very concerned about, maybe elsewhere, it's the same philosophy to me. So I do have concerns about that. Serious ones, to the point where I would almost vote this down just in protest of that, but I don't want to not support our administration or the teachers that do want and need resources. It's very difficult for me because I do feel really, really strongly about that. So I'm going to support this tonight, knowing that much of come in the fall, and I think I've expressed with other executive leadership, the alignment pre-K-12 and how this gets connected to our 6-12 is going to be very large for me. We haven't had a lot of conversation around that. Aligning to what is a big question for me, and filling in some of the gaps that we know exist as we look to advance many more students into our upper level courses. So that's the alignment that I'm going to be looking for. And I hope that come that time I will see some of that. So thank you very much. And I agree with Mrs. Vitale. If there's any opportunity, Mr. Testani, to give us periodic updates and bring us along a little bit on this journey that you're going on, I would love for that to happen. Mrs. Vitale, did you have a follow-up?
Just to the point about middle school, looking at some of the elementary school data, look at some of our, scores are higher than the state average and other districts, not at all negating those students that it is not acceptable for us to accept an opportunity gap, an achievement gap, and not meeting the needs of all of our learners. The elementary school piece, where you see the disconnect now at the middle school level, can you just, in your opinion, what the impact of what we're doing at elementary school is, how it's impacting middle school, and how you foresee this changing that in terms of content knowledge and just being able to address new vocabulary, et cetera.
So thank you for that. The fact that we're going to have about 90 people in the room at the same time from all different levels will increase that articulation. We know that it's very important. We need to look at our middle school, 5th to 6th. We need to look at our high school from 8 to 9, and we need to work backwards. We need to take a look at the data. We need to look at instruction. We need input from our stakeholders in order to figure out what is it that is making our scores decline as students go throughout the system, right? So I will invite you. You can begin coming on May 30th. Careful what you wish for, right? I will give you the schedule of all of our curriculum design dates. And so if you want to become involved in that, you are more than welcome to come and see what that articulation looks like. We are very worried that we haven't figured it out, but we have to figure it out. We have to figure out why our scores are declining. We have some assumptions of what may be happening, and a lot of it right now is anecdotal as I talk with high school and I talk with middle school folks. The consistency that we are bringing to the curriculum across grade levels, across our classrooms, building vocabulary, that academic vocabulary, I believe is a huge piece of this, as is the building of background knowledge. When we talk with our high school folks, we want students to be able to come into high school with that stamina to be able to write more formal types of writing. And even though we do write a lot in this district, I think we need to unpack that a little bit further. So I don't have the answer right now, but that's the purpose of the curriculum design process, so that we can go through the data and we can get the anecdotals and the experiences of our staff members and take a look at how our students are doing, because we do need to close those gaps.
Thank you. And Ms. Jacobson, I do appreciate in terms of the resources that right now, as we're looking at teacher shortages and bringing new teachers into the district and the workload of the elementary school teachers, that I do appreciate that as a district and the board that we are giving them, putting something in their hands to get to work right away. And so I do appreciate, again, the work that you're doing. And I'm very excited, especially about the preschool resources, because to Mr. Testani's point about, the interventions that we're seeing at the elementary school level, I'm even going to, thinking that if we address it in pre-K, we might see it, right just from that change alone. So we're going to take you up on that. I would love to come and see and just see the process. In the past, curriculum teams did include parents, and board members were part of that. I know with the pandemic, things have kind of changed, but would just ask that you and Dr. Zemanjanzik and Mr. Testani just think about your approach to building this curriculum, so everyone feels part of it and better understanding. So we can all be as excited as Mrs. Maxon-Cannelli and Mr. Peterson over there.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Well, I think to Janine's point, it's going to be a lot of work, so the more hands on deck that can participate and help move this along over the next, basically, 5.5 months, is going to be critical. So we encourage staff who had reservations or continue to have concerns to get involved. Now's the time to get involved, to ensure what you value, what you think is working, is at the table. Having input in that, not come back later on and be critical of the curriculum that's developed once it's completed.
Can I just end with one note here? We've been studying Dr. Robert Marzano's work for a very long time. He's a very well-known educational researcher, and he maintains that the single most important factor in a school or a district is a guaranteed and viable curriculum. Single most important. So we need to do a stellar job on this, and if you approve tonight, we will have several months leadway in order to bring to you that guaranteed and viable curriculum in November for approval in December. And I will guarantee you, you will be pleased.
Thank you. Okay. I think I'll take it to the public unless the board has anything else. All right, any members of the public who would like to come forward on this voting item? This is for into reading. No? Okay, back to the board. All in favor? Mrs. Rotelli, Mrs. Vitale, Mrs. Jacobson, Mr. Asa, Mrs. Maxon Kennelly, Mr. Peterson, and Mrs. Kelly. Opposed? Mrs. Guernsey, Mrs. Gerber? No abstentions. Motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to approval of policies. Adoption of policy 6148, improve completion rates of the free application for federal student aid FAFSA. Recommended motion that the Board of Education adopt policy 6148, improve completion rates of the free application for federal student aid. Mrs. Maxon Kennelly motions. Second, please. Mr. Peterson, discussion?
I didn't receive any questions on this, so I don't know if there are any.
Don't see any. To the public, any comment on this item? None. Back to the board. All in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Adoption of policy 4118.6 and cell phone use, and 4218.6. Sorry, guys. Recommended motion that the Board of Education adopt policy 4118.6, 4218.6 cell phone use. Mrs. Maxon Kennelly, Mr. Peterson. Any discussion?
Well, I want to say, I don't, picking up Mrs. Gerber's question from the last meeting, I don't know if Ms. Laborious had a chance to address the concern that was raised about the consistency of language, or you don't care?
It really wasn't a concern. It was just a question. That's all. And if the policy committee is fine with it, I'm fine with it. I just was more curious as to why it was different. That's all.
It was a good question.
Yes. Take it to the public. Any comment on this? No. Back to the board. All in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Adoption of policy 6161, instructional resources. Recommended motion that the Board of Education adopt policy 6161, instructional resources. Mrs. Maxon Kennelly, seconded by Mr. Peterson. Discussion.
So just to start it off again, this is in keeping with several current conversations and the one we just completed regarding looking for the consistency of experience. And so that certainly was the genesis of some of the changes made to this, as well as seeking to add some clarity. And so that's just a little bit of the background, but we discussed this quite a bit at the last meeting, so I'll just pause there for other comments.
Mrs. Vitale.
Thank you. And as indicated at the last meeting, I am putting forth an amendment to this policy. I shared with the board members. I think, Mr. Testani, I left one for you too. If not, I have another copy. My amendment is after on the section on trade books, 6161B, to add the following text. Teachers will be able to, now that I'll read what's existing, trade books, example novels, and literature, and other books not meeting the above definition of a textbook used for whole class instruction will be considered and listed as resources in the FPS curriculum documents. I'm suggesting that we add, teachers will be able to choose the specific resource used to meet the curriculum standards. Trade books identified by the Curriculum Review Committee as assured texts, those read by all students across all sections of a course, will be identified as such in the curriculum documents. The board delegates to the chief academic officer or designee the authority to add, remove trade books to the resource list outside of the curriculum review process. Any updates to the resource list will be shared with the Board of Education during a public meeting or through the posted Friday packet. Trade books are not considered textbooks and do not require dedicated approval through this policy.
So, okay, Mrs. Gerber second. So motion made by Mrs. Vitale, seconded by Mrs. Gerber. Any discussion on the amendment? Mr. Peterson.
Can I just...
Oh, sorry, Mrs. Vitale, I'm sorry.
I know that was a long amendment. It seemed like I spoke to it. And the thinking behind this, as I shared, our curriculum documents, and it's a little bit difficult to approach this because I'm looking pre-K through 12. So when I was looking at this policy, I was really thinking about trade books, specifically in our high school English classes, where we don't list specific titles in our current curriculum documents. You know, we might be doing a lesson on Jane Austen. Austen is referenced. Some teachers might be choosing one novel. Another teacher might be using, you know, Pride and Prejudice, Sense and Sensibility, for examples. But still, teaching in the classes, meeting the standards outlined in the curriculum documents. I want there to still be that flexibility and autonomy for teachers to be able to choose which text out of the list of resources. I also appreciate the conversations about the assured texts, that if we want every 10th grader to read Romeo and Juliet, that is clear, just to provide that information to our teachers. I also appreciate that right now, given our current curriculum review cycle, you know, waiting years to potentially add new trade books or have them be available to our teachers, I would not be okay with that. So I think there needs to be a process. I have the chief academic officer really because of the nature of this policy, but the superintendent, you know, I'd be open to an amendment, friendly amendment to change that. You know, could oversee that and just notify the board. And that's really where I am on this, trying to get that balance of still providing teachers some flexibility and autonomy about the resources that they use to best put forward the curriculum documents that the board approves, while also making it clear that there's an expectation that there is going to be potentially assured texts and a mechanism to address changes outside of the curriculum review process. I has really concerns about, you know, updates to the curriculum every time a trade book is potentially, you know, changes. I think that creates operational, I could see it creating some operational challenges, just having been in the position of trying to schedule board meetings and our already full agendas. So that is really the nature of what brought me to this policy. As you know, struggling with the last two versions of it. I really do appreciate the policy committee's work on this and, you know, willing to take it up again, and to Mrs. Mancinelli for just working with me through, you know, as some of the questions that I had about trying to get even just this language to put forth an amendment, and to Dr. Zeman-Janzik also, who humored me with my questions. I think the amendment is necessary because when I asked questions about, well, what if, you know, what if we add a new book comes out? It seems like it would be a good resource. Would it need to come before the board? Some people say yes, some people say no. That gave me some concern. So hopefully this might clarify, and back to you.
Mr. Peterson.
All right, thank you. I understand where this is coming from. I really do, especially in a situation as we've talked about at this table, or we're having a lot of different books and the possibility of some coming in and coming out. That said, I have serious reservations about how this is worded, and the possible ramifications of this amendment. Our own policy 6140, which we have before us a little later in this meeting, says pretty explicitly the Board of Education approves curriculum. That's the intent of state statute. That's been our longstanding practice. And the idea that administration would be able to make changes to our curriculum documents outside of the current process, not only does that bother me, but I believe that level of divergence from our longstanding practice deserves a fuller board discussion and not something that simply gets added as an amendment to a policy. And an amendment, I appreciate that Ms. Vitale got it to us, but she got it to us today. We have not had a robust discussion on what that might mean, ceding some level of curriculum approval authority from this board to administration. Now, I also, you know, my basic question, I understand what you're saying too about you don't want to get curriculum tangled in a process of constant revision, and I understand that. But I see no reason why administration couldn't bring us a one-line amendment at a meeting. That would be, we want to add this book and remove this book from the resource list, not changing anything about instructional practice. So given those facts and the fact that this represents a potentially geologic shift in the way we do things at this board, I don't think this is the appropriate venue for this to be approved, to come into our discussion.
Go ahead, Mrs. Vitale.
I understand that. I think that listing every single resource in the curriculum document is a huge shift from the way that we've always done things as well, to be quite honest. And that really is what is, I was trying to find a place where I would feel comfortable with the policy, appreciating the work that the policy committee did and some of the concerns expressed by administration. But I really don't think that we need to list every single resource in the curriculum document. I think that, honestly, it really is more of a management issue in terms of that. We have curriculum, we have standards, that's the document, and we trust our educators to provide those resources to support those documents. That's the way that we have been doing it for decades. And I heard, some of the concerns about maybe not management of books, that somebody might be reading a book in 9th grade and then it gets read again later on. And I would not want that situation necessarily to happen because that's not the best use of time for teachers or students. But I do wonder if that could be handled just through a management change. And we've invested in some changes in management in terms of giving more responsibility to department heads at the high school level. This is where my mind is still thinking. But it came before us through policy, not even through the curriculum policy, but through the instructional resources policy, and sort of changing how we even, I'm not even sure why we needed to define trade books in this. I think we're handling a curriculum issue in some extent in the instructional resources policy. So I hear your concerns. I kind of shared them. Boards of education can delegate some of authority to the administration. I think that if the changing of a resource changed the curriculum itself and the standard, then it would need to come before the board for a change. But I'm not really sure if you're reading Pride and Prejudice instead of Sense and Sensibility, but you're still meeting everything that's outlined in the curriculum document, much of a difference.
Mr. Peterson.
Thanks. To be brief, through the chair to Ms. Vitale, and refocusing this on the amendment that's before us. The policy, instructional materials policy, has been through committee and several board meetings of discussion. Your amendment has not. That is the nature of my objection to the transparency aspect.
I'm gonna get Mr. Peterson.
I take the transparency. I think I've been very clear about my concerns about this policy at this meeting from the start. And I apologize for not getting it to the board sooner. Part of it was really wanting to get the right language and trying to understand the motivation of changing this policy to the extent that it was changed. And that took some time just with speaking with board leadership and with members of the administration. It was not in any way trying to not give you the opportunity for a board discussion.
Maxon Kennelly, go ahead.
I just get the last name, Maxon. A few reactions. One, I appreciate that Ms. Vitale engaged me in conversation about this. I've obviously been, once again, a passionate supporter of the policy originally. The subsequent conversation, I shaped a very productive policy committee discussion where we took it up again and, quite frankly, produced a far superior draft. This is much better than what we did the first time. I would be very comfortable with the policy as is. However, I do see the point to this amendment, and I will be able to support it. Again, I don't think I think the first paragraph is not necessarily necessary, but we all often put things in policy that aren't necessarily necessary. It does help to lay out a process and some explicit directives to staff. The second paragraph, obviously, is the one with the meat to it. And the reason I am able to support it is because I know that this is a seismic shift for us. Including a resource list is not something that we do, and that is what I was very passionate about from the moment we picked this up, of having the mandatory assured texts become part of our curriculum documents that would come before the board, and having a resource list designated per course. That was my aim. And so this policy will achieve that, and this amendment continues to achieve that. And I do see the merits of this. I have a couple of amendments to the amendment I would like to offer, but first I want to just say the reason that I can support this is because ultimately I don't view that this would change curriculum at all. It's one thing if you have, all right, and I'm going to go back to the canon because that's my language. It's one thing if you have a unit that's centered around the Scarlet Letter and you say, no, we've decided we're going to add the Great Gatsby. That is fundamentally a different unit. That would not be something that this policy would enable staff to do without coming before the board. That is a change to curriculum. A change to, I'll go for a simple example. If we have the Scarlet Letter and somebody says, I want to add the House of the Seven Gables, unit doesn't change. It gives a different resource as an alternative to that teacher to use. Again, not changing the curriculum, which would need to come before us. That thinking is why I would be comfortable with this. Again, I would have been comfortable with the first draft, but I would like for this policy to garner greater support, and in that spirit I can compromise and accept this wording here. I don't know if now is the time for me to offer the two other things, but
Let's let people ask any clarifying questions that they have first, if you don't mind. Mr. Peterson, I have a point of clarification just on your comment before about approving the resources outside of the curriculum, and maybe I'm just misunderstanding what you're saying because we do that all of the time.
This amendment as written would change the resource documents, which according to the amendment, according to policy, are part of the curriculum documents.
So you're speaking to the future curriculum documents or future resources, like we just approved a textbook outside, we didn't amend the curriculum documents, we just approved textbooks several times recently, so without an amendment to the curriculum. I'm just trying to understand what you're trying to say.
This amendment gives administration unilateral authority to change our curriculum documents.
The resource section on trade books.
It's part of the curriculum document, correct?
Okay, yes.
Yes, so that is my objection.
All right, what I'm just trying to understand is
Policy 6140 of this board says curriculum shall be subject to the approval of the Board of Education.
Yes.
The policy change that we are contemplating later in this meeting adds that approval part to another area of the policy. That is my fundamental objection here.
All right, I just wanted to understand what you're saying because we don't do that now, but in the future, okay.
Ms. Jacobson, but to be clear, our current documents don't name the resources. So you're the one who's talking about future documents. You know, in the past when we've approved a textbook outside of our curriculum review cycle, it wasn't that that textbook was named in the curriculum document. So that's a past practice, which given where our current curriculum documents have turned, that point then would be valid. But right now, they're not named in our documents at all. So when we approve a resource out of the discussion of the curriculum, it's not named in the curriculum document, so it's handled completely separately.
We do have some that have them in there, but I just wanted to understand what Mr. Peterson's point was. All right, anyone else on the amendment? Mrs. Guernsey?
I just wanted to share that as a member of the policy committee, this is probably one of the most complicated and frankly confusing policies that we've worked on. And I've been uncomfortable with both previous iterations of it. I really grateful to Mrs. Vitale for making this amendment because I think it provides a little bit more balance where I'm slightly more comfortable for it, so I would support that amendment. And I'm just kind of, I'm thinking about whether or not I would want to make a motion to move this vote to a future date certain. I'm not sure because I don't want to rush something as important as this. So, you know, to Mr. Peterson's point, if this is making him uncomfortable, I'm feeling sensitive to that, so that's something I'm sort of thinking about now.
Sure, Mr. Testani.
Would it be helpful if the department, the English department, submitted a list of possible resources annually prior to the start of the school year to just notify the board of what possible trade books could be utilized in their courses throughout that school year? And if they were going to deviate from that list, prior notification and approval from the board would have to occur prior to that happening.
So meaning not include, so you're meaning an amendment to the original underlying policy where they would not be listed in the curriculum documents?
I mean, correct. Not listed in the curriculum documents, but presented to the board at the beginning of the school year, because I'm sure each teacher already knows what they're going to utilize in their classes throughout the school year. And then that is approved annually. This way that we don't have to wait 10 years, or even if we shorten the curriculum review cycle to 5 or 6 years. So annually, at least as maybe a new book is released from a new author that wants to be incorporated in an elective course that would be appropriate, that would be presented to the board on an annual basis rather than have to go through chief academic officer, who we all love now, but maybe another chief academic officer comes in and wants to, you know, just change things wholeheartedly, and teachers have an issue with that. I'm just trying to find, excuse me, a common ground where we can all agree that the teachers, I know they're not going to say in October, I'm not going to use that, I'm just going to use this. They're planning their lessons well far in advance. And I'm sure Mr. McGarry can attest to that as an English teacher.
Mrs. Vitale.
The thought of the board just having to approve a list of trade books makes me, and I appreciate, and this is why I struggle with the policy the first round of having in the curriculum documents. You know, we adopt textbooks. You know, it's available for us to review, to look through. I think there's a reason why we don't currently have every trade book that we use in our curriculum documents, because if the board is going to approve every single book, I think there would be an expectation that we should probably read every single book or put it out to the public to read every single book. I think that we're going down a really slippery slope here in terms of what the role of the Board of Education is and what the role of administration and our educators are. But appreciate some of what this policy has put forward, tried to still provided some flexibility to Ms. Maxine Kennelly's point about we have approved curriculum, House of Seven Gables, Scarlet Letter. There's still some teacher agency while still providing the board with a better understanding of what resources will support the curriculum that we approve, as well as an opportunity that if the curriculum, if new resources become available, that there is a mechanism for administration or our educators to make that choice and alert the board. I have no interest in the board approving specific trade books as if they are textbooks, because they are not.
Ms. Maxine Kennelly?
So that we can chart a path forward, could we obviously, we have to vote on the amendment unless the amendment gets withdrawn, but I'm interested in following up on Mrs. Guernsey's point, because if it would help board members to postpone, we don't have to do this tonight. If it's not going to make a difference, then let's, chart that path forward. So I don't know, to the chair, how you'd like to navigate that, but I think getting that input would be helpful to know how to shape the subsequent conversation.
Sorry, go ahead. Well, I'm just going to ask board members. I mean, it would be helpful to a majority of board members, in terms of waiting to the May 23rd meeting in order to gain some clarification on this, or are people clear now? I mean, I don't want to delay something just to delay it, unless there is a good reason to get some clarifications or to ask questions that you can't ask of the people that are here this evening. Otherwise, let's do what we're going to do. Mrs. Kelly.
I was just going to jump in and say I'm probably a no on the amendment, but a yes on the original. Just if that's what we wanted, to get a
Doesn't
sense
help-
of the body, that is where I am.
Delay doesn't help you at all. Okay, Mr. Peterson.
I have no desire to delay this.
So, anyone else? Oh, sorry. I think, yeah, but I mean, if we have people who really.
I don't need a delay.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, it looks like we will move forward then. Okay. Any other questions on the, since the chief academic officer is named in the policy, I will just ask if this is clear for you and helpful. I know that I've been interested in a mechanism why we would not, there would be some ability to not change the underlying curriculum, obviously, but potentially what may end up in this resource list to better support. So just do you have any feelings on this?
As long as the underlying curriculum, to your point, remains the same, I'm okay with that. I do think there needs to be a process in place to test out materials before they simply get integrated, so that we're not just purchasing books without going through that process of making sure that there is a way to verify that it is connected to the standards in the unit moving forward. But otherwise, yes, I'm okay with that.
Mrs. Maxon-Kennelly? So on this amendment before Mrs. Maxon-Kennelly, okay, looks like everyone's good. Go ahead, Jen.
I think I'll separate these in two, but I would like to amend the amendment. And I will withdraw this upon the feedback of Mr. Testani, but I do think that where it says that the board delegates to the chief academic officer, to be consistent with the vast majority of our policies, I would prefer that that be the board delegates to the superintendent.
I'll second that amendment.
To Mr. Testani's point, who knows who could be in here next? Or if Mr. Zavajanza could go rogue. But that would be my first amendment.
Okay, so you would envision the superintendent working with the chief academic officer on something like that, or Mr. Testani, do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I think we would definitely be able to work that more appropriately through the superintendent, who obviously reports to the Board of Education.
Okay.
And as one final point, I completely agree with Mrs. Vitale. I think any superintendent would immediately say,
yeah,
this is the role of the chief academic officer. I don't question for a second really whose focus it should be. I'm looking to just be consistent with the majority of our policies.
And I second it because I agree with that. I had superintendent, I went back and forth. It was really just, I looked at some aspects of the policies, and we had human resources, Mr. Mancusi, but I appreciate the difference and have absolutely no problem, being consistent with delegating to the superintendent.
Okay. Next item. Did you have it? You want to do the same one? Okay. All right. So all in favor of the amendment to the amendment, which is the superintendent, but I'm going to go to the public on the amendment, just changing this to the superintendent piece for right now. No public comment. All in favor of the amendment? Oh, sorry. This is just on changing the word to superintendent. This is the amendment to the amendment. This is just the word superintendent right now. Yeah. Don't want to use your time. Sure. All right. All in favor? Of making the amendment? Sorry. Mrs. Kelly, Mrs. Vitale, Mrs. Gerber, Mrs. Guernsey, Mrs. Jacobson, Mr. Asa, Mrs. Maxon-Kennelly, and Mrs. Kelly. All opposed? Did you have your hand up? Oh, abstention? Sorry. Abstain. Okay, thank you. Okay. All right, back to the amendment as amended. Yes, Mrs. Maxine Kennelly.
My second amendment is that at the first sentence of that second paragraph, and I do apologize, Mrs. Vitale, that I did not get this to you ahead of time as a suggestion, but that after where it says resource list outside of the curriculum review process, that the sentence end via a process outlined in the administrative regs.
Wait, Jen, can you read that?
Sure. So the sentence ends as written, resource list outside of the curriculum review process, and I'm looking to add via a process outlined in the administrative regs.
You get a second on that, Mrs. Gerber? Discussion, go ahead.
And just speaking to this, this is an assurance to the public that there's a definite process. It is transparent to the public. It is also therefore any staff member who is reading this would know to look at that. And it's something that Dr. Zavajanzik intends to do anyway. So I think having this be explicit in the policy is only helpful.
Thank you for that, Jen. I'm just going to ask a clarifying question. Do you envision this in the administrative regs as a part of this where perhaps a teacher may bring forth for a recommendation for a change and somehow that would be worked into the, oh, I see nodding happening. Just, I did want to, okay, you do. All right, thank you. You can come speak to it.
There's currently a process in the reg, not in the regs, there's currently a process when a teacher wants to do something similar. And within the regs, there's other processes on evaluation criteria as well as challenging of books and so forth. So it would fit naturally into the process.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions or comments on this amendment? Nope, take it to the public, just on adding the regulation language. You want to add that? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. I did want to clarify. The process does exist.
Just name your name and address for the
I'm
record. Sorry.
Mick McGarry, English teacher at Ward, president-elect of the FEA. The process, there is a process that exists. It requires 2 readers of a text. One teacher has to identify a text that they think would fit well into the curriculum, perhaps as an additional text or supplemental text, or to replace something that's currently in the curriculum. But it doesn't change the curriculum, it just changes the text that's used in that particular unit, addressing the essential question of the unit. But it does require then a second reader who would have to also give a recommendation, and then it goes to a vote of the department, at which point the chair would then move it on to the chief academic officer. So very happy to see that that's clarified, though, that it wouldn't be just the superintendent making a decision, but it would follow the process. So that would be very welcome. Thank you.
Okay, back to the board on the amendment. All in favor? Mrs. Ritelli, Mrs. Vitale, Mrs. Gerber, Mrs. Guernsey, Mrs. Jacobson, Mr. Asa, Mrs. Maxine Kennelly, Mrs. Kelly. Opposed? Abstention? Mr. Peterson. Motion passes. Thank you. All right, back to the amendment as amended. Any further comment? Okay, public comment on the amendment as amended? No? Oh, okay.
Thank you, Mick McGarry, again. Just want to say that I believe the added language specifying that teachers will get to choose the text from a list is very welcome, because that does give the teacher autonomy to choose the appropriate text that they are comfortable with or know best, or can bring something special because of their personal experience or educational experience that then they can bring more to the table with a particular text. So that autonomy is very important to the teachers. There is some concern about the number of assured texts. You know, there is no teacher autonomy if the number of assured texts becomes so large that it encompasses the entire year or even the majority of the year, then there's much less teacher autonomy. So that particular part gives some pause and some concern. And I think we'll have to work that out through the curriculum writing process.
Thank you. All right, back to the board. All in favor? Oh, sorry. Mrs. Maxon Kennelly?
Just to the final point, or just to the point raised in public comment, very important for the board to understand regarding the assured text. Those are the ones that are, the mandatory ones. That's not something that we're exactly having say in aside from the total curriculum vote. That is what is going to be worked on this summer and into the fall by staff. Staff will be deciding that. That said, I just want to put out there as a suggestion, we do have a representative to work on with curriculum, that maybe some updates on that. If staff has any questions on whether the board is going to approve it, because they say, well, we've decided, okay, I'm going to be ridiculous here. We've decided that the only assured text for freshman year is going to be this poem. You think the board would like that or not? I'm saying that if staff has questions, I would invite them to reach out through the chair to Mrs. Guernsey, to get some board feedback on that so that they're feeling more confident that this is what we were looking for come November. So
Yes.
it's just a suggestion, because normally there's not a lot of conversation between the board and the department working on the curriculum until it lands on our table for the presentation. So I just make that as a suggestion.
And to your point, I share that on the opposite end, too many assured and not enough flexibility. Right, in either direction.
I thought there was going to be a question, so I came up. We are shoring up the curriculum committee stuff in terms of the approval process and the procedures moving forward as well. So that's a good suggestion.
Thank you. We didn't vote yet, right? Okay, all right, back to the motion as amended. All right, all in favor? Right, the amendment as amended. All in favor? Mrs. Vitale, Mrs. Gerber, Mrs. Guernsey, Mrs. Jacobson, Mrs. Maxon Kennelly. Motion passes. I'm sorry, opposed? Mrs. Rotelli, Mrs. Kelly, Mr. Peterson, and Mr. Asa. Motion passes 5-4, sorry. Thank you. All right. Back to the main policy. Any further discussion on the policy as a whole? Mr. Peterson.
Thank you. I would have supported the unamended policy. I would be opposing the amended policy because the amended policy, I believe, is in direct conflict with our policy 6140.
Anyone else? Okay. Public comment on the policy as a whole, as amended. Mrs. Maxon Kennelly?
Assuming, I just want to make one final comment that this is, I'll acknowledge this, a little bit more aggressive than we've been in the past. However, I very much look forward to the curriculum documents that we see as a result of this. But I remind the board, I remind staff that if things in this end up being flawed or problematic, it can always go back to policy committee, that we are always open to suggestions or recommendations that things were not workable and that they can be changed. This is not being, carved into stone or anything like that, and I just think that's an important reminder.
Okay. Back to the board. All in favor? Mrs. Vitale, Mrs. Gerber, Mrs. Guernsey, Mrs. Jacobson, and Mrs. Maxon Kennelly, all opposed. Mrs. Kelly, Mr. Peterson, Mr. Asa, and Mrs. Rotelli. Motion passes 5-4. Thank you. Okay. Adoption of education specifications for roof projects. Adoption of McKinley Roof Project Ed Specs. Recommended motion that the Board of Education adopt the educational specifications for the McKinley Elementary School partial roofing replacement project. Can I get a motion, please? Mr. Asa, seconded by Mr. Peterson. Any board discussion on this item? No? Any public comment on this item? Back to the board. All in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Adoption of Holland Hill Roof Project Ed Specs. Recommended motion that the Board of Education adopt the educational specifications for the Holland Hill partial roofing replacement. Can I get a motion, please? Mr. Peterson. Mr. Asa is the second. Any discussion? Public comment? Back to the board. All in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Moving on, first reading of 2023-2024 budget adjustments. Superintendent Testani.
Thank you. As we're all aware, the Board of Education proposed budget of $210,695,578 was reduced at the Board of Selectmen level to $210,195,578. The proposed budget from the Board of Finance was $210,163,445, and the adopted budget on May 1st, 2023, by the RTM was the final number of $163,445, a net reduction from the proposed Board of Ed budget, which was adopted, of $532,133. I recommend making the adjustments to reduce the health insurance budget by $500,000 and the pension budget by $32,133. The insurance rates were initially budgeted with a projected 10% renewal rate increase based on the preliminary estimate for the Connecticut Partnership Plan. The insurance rates were finalized on April 13, 2023 at 8% renewal rate. Second, the assessment received from the town actuary in late January with a flat amount for the upcoming year, resulting in a $30,000 budget savings. So the reduction in insurance will be reflected to cover the proposed adopted budget, which was $532,133 less than the proposed budget passed by the Board of Education.
Mr. Peterson?
Hi, thank you. Just a quick note. In the text, you say you're proposing to reduce health insurance by $500,000 and the pension budget by $32,133, but down in the line below, you say a reduction from number one, insurance, of $532,133. You've combined both items. So they're in one major category?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just ask a really quick follow-up? Those are two different line items in the budget. Are you qualifying them under one line item as benefits, so to speak? Okay, all right, thank you, because I had the same question, Mr. Peterson. Anything else on 23-24? Mrs. Maxon Kennelly?
I'm not sure if this is the time to bring it up as part of this, or if it's something that could be encumbered within any surplus of the 22-23 school year. So I raised it already with you, Mrs. Jacobson, to notify you that I would be bringing this up. Can I just bridge the gap here? Because I'm not sure. I would want to leave it up to administration how to address what I'm about to talk about.
If it may be applicable to the 23-24 vote,
Okay.
Then you should discuss it now.
Okay, so I did reach out in advance to Mrs. Jacobson and Mr. Testani, and I want to thank Mr. Testani for meeting with me last week. Excellent conversation in which I raised a few things. Chief, though, on my agenda was to talk about Math Academy, which I'm only using that phrase not because I'm advocating for it to come back, which won't happen, but everyone knows then what I'm talking about, so just to simplify. But I just raised the issue with Mr. Testani because I'll come back to the point that I have raised more times than I can count, and my math is decent, but the issue that we have an identified group of exceptional learners, and exceptional learners run the gamut for various identifications, but this is an identified group of exceptional learners whose needs are not being met. The difference for this group is that the law does not require that we meet them. Now, that's obviously at the gifted level, and I think one of the things that we might be looking at next year, and I look forward to the work that's going to happen with that, is how do we really consider again this idea of the gifted and talented by subject area, whether it's arts, whether it's the humanities, whether it's math, and how can we meet those exceptional learners in subgroups. But right now, the group before us is math, because we did have something in place for them. I'm just doing a quick recap. But again, I did, in last year, of course, what we ended up doing after it was not put back in the budget We did offer that early identification, that April, I think, identification, April, May, then re-identification, and offering them the opportunity for a summer program to take fourth grade math in several weeks, test to prove mastery of content, and then enroll as fourth graders in fifth grade classrooms. Obviously, that's not what's happening next year. However, that doesn't change the fact that we have an identified group of students who are exceptional at math, who are way beyond their peers in terms of ability, who are sitting there, and I'm just going to oversimplify, wasting their time with math that they don't need any more than you would take a high schooler and put them in first grade math. Again, a little bit of an exaggeration. And so I asked Mr. Tastani, how can we serve these children? What is the plan? And of course, one thing that's of a considerable difference is that Mr. Tastani can't exactly charge somebody with overseeing a change like this because we're getting new math leadership. And I'm sensitive to that as well. So this is all to the point of saying that Mr. Tastani assured me that he is committed to coming up with something to help these children, to serve them, to enrich their math experience. I'm not even going to use the word acceleration because I don't know what's going to happen yet for next year, and I'm sure that whatever we come up with for next year, it's going to look different the year after that. But I don't want this class of third graders to simply be forgotten because of the turnover and the changes that we are experiencing. That is a long way of saying I am interested financially either looking to do an adjustment within the 23-24 budget, or if it's something that could be addressed, encumbered through the surplus of the 22-23. I'm not the budget person, but I'm interested in setting aside some professional curriculum development money for the summer for what I would envision would be whatever collection of MSTs, elementary school teachers, hopefully pulling in one or both of the Holland Hill Math Academy teachers whose expertise in this would be invaluable, to come up with something to work with our new math executive director to prepare something for next school year. Obviously, it would start with a goal, and then how do we achieve the goal, whether it's a pull-out process or whatever it might be. The one thing I know is that if next school year starts and this hasn't happened, nothing will happen for those children except the dreaded, here are some extra worksheets because you're good at this. And that's such a departure from a new attitude that we had embraced a few years back. So again, long backstory, but I'm interested, obviously now we're not voting on anything right now. I'm simply interested if you could pull together what the budget numbers would be needed to do that type of curriculum work this summer based on the number of people that you or staff advise you would be needed for that work. And then very much appreciate your guidance in terms of where could that best be found, and then I'll have to work on winning the board to the idea of it.
So we have had considerable conversation around this. We have included our new executive director, who you will all meet shortly, in the conversation. I think there are a lot of great ideas that have been are floating out there. They are a group of students that I have right on my open on my computer, so it's a group I will never forget. I get a constant reminder throughout the day. We do have money put aside in the budget for professional learning that I think will cover whatever we have, so I don't think it's necessary to make any transfers into the current surplus or for next year. We do have a bucket of money that we have set aside for professional development and learning that we will access, and curriculum writing and the such. So I'm very confident we can do this and do this well. We have some really strong ideas and possibilities that will limit the cost to the district, but provide, as you mentioned, an enriching experience for these students that go deeper than what we currently have in place, which is, as you said, there's really not a dedicated math academy, but I think we can be so much more. And we're looking at how many students we would be able to provide that enriching experience rather than just a small group of students. I've asked the folks that are testing right now and have been testing to identify 3 tiers of students. So those that would have qualified under the traditional criteria, lowering the criteria just slightly, and then the top so many students at every school, what that would look like by school, and how that would measure up comparatively across the district. So we have a couple of subsets of kids that we're very encouraged that we can enrich. The good thing is students that are entering sixth grade next year, our rising sixth graders, with all the testing that is done traditionally of our fifth grade students, there are a significant number who did not qualify 2 years ago in third grade that will be joining their peers in seventh grade math, just through going through the curriculum and whatever else. I'm not sure if parents do provide any other enhancement and enrichment outside of the school day on their own, but there are a significant number of students that will be entering seventh grade math, and we don't have a final number yet because there's still some testing that's being done. But outside of the current students that are in the Math Academy, there's another 70-some-odd students that have been identified to qualify, not as a parent opt-in, but legitimately qualify through the testing process. So it's encouraging to notice that just through the natural progression of the math curriculum that we're doing a good job in preparing those kids to go in sixth grade to seventh grade math.
Mrs. Mexican.
I do think you're onto something in terms of the supplemental work that parents are doing outside of the curriculum, which, again, it's great that they're able to. I've always been concerned about the parents who aren't as able and what their child could have as potential, but that's a different conversation. I guess the reason I had thought there might be additional is that I have no doubt that there's a tremendous need at the secondary level with what we should be seeing soon in terms of the secondary math curriculum. I guess I assumed that the math portion that's allocated in our budget book was really going to be needed to go towards that secondary. So that's not the case. There will be no adjustment needed because, again, better to do it now than to make you feel over the summer that something has to be done on the cheap because we don't have the money.
Absolutely. I think we're okay right now, but we are monitoring everything very closely, and if we need to make any adjustments, we'll be prepared to do so.
Okay, thank you. And then my only other comment, and then I'm done with this topic, is just want to ensure that is there communication happening with those third grade parents? Because I can only imagine that they feel like they're in a bit of a waiting pattern.
So, yeah, correct. There are two parents that are kind of leading the group. I met with them yesterday in person, and we had a great conversation. They threw out some ideas that pretty much align with some of the things that we are thinking. They are kind of reporting back from that meeting to the rest of the parents. They do have a social media communication amongst the group that I was informed of. But again, they have some ideas of their own because they understand. They do watch the board meetings and they follow, and they're very understanding. And I think what they are looking for is an enrichment program, at the very least, that will satisfy some of the gaps that their students would have if they just stayed in the regular track. So.
But are you saying that the district will not be communicating with these parents?
No, we will be.
Oh,
we will
okay,
be.
all right.
Formally,
Thank you.
yes.
Okay. Anything else on 23-24? No? All right. So this will be on for a vote at the next meeting. What did I just do? I heard it. All right. Approval of budget transfers for the 22-23 fiscal year. Motion? Mr. Peterson, second. Mr. Asa? Discussion? Mr. Testani? Or
Courtney, do you want to just give the high-level highlights of the transfers?
Sure. So this is in line with what we've been presenting as the funds that we have available in the categories of personnel, which is staff replacement and insurance. And we're proposing to transfer that to 4 main categories, or actually 3 main categories. So to technology for capital, for software, to maintenance for big security projects. The Osborne bathroom renovation came in higher than we originally projected, so this is the difference in the maintenance category. And then the Roger Ludlow, that memo is incorrect. It should say high school, not middle school, so I apologize. We'll issue that as a correction. That it should be the high school elevator replacement, and it's the balance of the non-recurring funds. And that totals for the maintenance projects, major maintenance of $320,000. And the instructional services that we spoke about earlier, it's the first of 3 years, which Ms. Goss did highlight for you in the presentation at the last board meeting. So this is $450,000 of that, of which I have additional detail. I'll just say $10,000 is the World of Wonders for year 1. It's the first installment of 2. The literacy, the K through 5 intro to reading, it's $363,050, and that's the first installment of 3. And then there are additional funding for, as people pointed out, a good thing to get started with the teacher hours and the consulting to get the curriculum, that work underway. That's $76,950. So the total is $450,000 being proposed. Technology breakout is balance of the Chromebook devices. We had spoken before about reducing the budget ask with Mr. Testani's goal of getting all the incoming middle schoolers and incoming freshmen a new device so that we can be on a more uniform cycle for refresh for the Chromebooks. And also it's for interactive boards, so that reduced our ask from next year. There are also 3 software components: the final site website redesign, which is part of the communication effort, outreach to families to make our website more friendly. School dismissal manager, this is the investment in software so that my daughter, I use it for my daughter. I love it. It lets parents know when the bus is going to arrive in the morning and in the afternoon, so you don't have to be standing outside waiting forever. And then, in addition, paper cut software, which we spoke to you earlier about, which is enabling us to not track but monitor usage so that we can use our copiers and printing devices more efficiently.
Any questions, Mr. Asa?
Just a quick question on the dismissal manager. Will that also eventually give parents the ability and the school buildings to communicate on changes for dismissal? So if your kid is normally a busser and they're going to be picked up in the afternoon, that paper notes don't have to be sent in anymore?
Correct, yes. So, yeah, it's really nice for families that are going to be newly using it as we roll it out, in that, let's just say your kid goes somewhere on Monday, somewhere different on Tuesday like mine. You set that, and it has time limits, so you can set they're on bus 11 on Monday, bus 10, you don't have to do the paper anymore. So you get a confirmation that it's been seen, and the teachers review that so that they know what's happening with their students during the week.
That'll be excellent. This is a long time coming, so thank you.
Definitely, yeah, we appreciate the support for that.
Mrs. Maxon Kennelly?
Quick follow-up to that. How do subs get access to that then?
It's a good question. I'm going to turn to my colleague, Mr. Papageorge, since he helped to assess this project, and if he doesn't know, we'll get back to you. I do not know that, but yeah.
So it's identified inside the school, so it would go to the teachers, but there's also a backup, so you get the secretaries as well, so if there's a sub, the information get passed along.
Other questions? Mrs. Vitale?
For Mr. Papageorge, just about Osborne Hill, I apologize, I'm not asking. Was it just a lot of little things that added to the overage, or one big thing?
It was a lot of, I'd say a lot of little things. Originally, when we budgeted this project, it was really to do kind of a refresh, some walls, some paint. Digging in, we've determined that some more structural support, internal parts, plumbing were needed. So we identified them, and we didn't want to just walk in and do paint and new structure, new dividers on some bigger problems that were identified.
Thank you. Happy to hear that. Nice not to put, Band-Aids on a wound that's bleeding internally. Dark, I know.
Eat. Mrs. Kelly.
Hi, I just had a couple questions, and then, so if I look at this, it looks like the money that we're transferring from, that adds up to about $1.3 million.
Correct.
I apologize for not having the information from previous, because you said this is the third set of transfers. What is the total amount then that we have transferred if these are approved year to date, what would the transfers?
Sure. So I'm going to say it two different ways, and we talked about this at Finance Committee, so I just want to be clear. If you add the January 19th transfers and the May 9th proposed tonight's transfers, it is $2.6 million. There was a pre-budget, so start of year, so transfer from, if you'll recall, paraeducators line, because we early on knew that we were having challenge staffing. And so we moved that money. It's a one-to-one relationship, so we moved it from consulting. Okay, that's okay. Okay, so thank you.
So the 1.3 then in relation to the 1.9 that's showing on Q3, am I trying to compare apples and oranges there? Or does that mean there's 600,000 left that we haven't spent? Like, how do I get from the 1.3 to the 1.9?
Correct, yeah. So because it was as of a March number, this is what we felt comfortable, because the goal was to not have the flurry of spending at year end, as in past we had. So we did start this with round one, at which point we were identifying like a $2.6 million surplus, and then still consistently see that same surplus balance value. So yes, if the projections continue into Q4 as part of our regular year-end process, we would have those additional funds. Part of the reason you don't see that all here is because it wouldn't require a vote, because it would be within the major classification. It's part of the conversation we'd have with you next week, was part of the facility update.
Okay, and then I know I mentioned this in finance, but I think it bears repeating at the table that this is a significant amount. This is not, and we talked about this as well, this is not, nobody's faulting the budgeting process or practices. It is not, that is not it. My discomfort lies in the fact that it is a lot of money, and I'm uncomfortable spending it all. I would like to give some of it back to the town. I also, I look at some of the things we're spending it on, which is all good, valid things, but these are also things, had they been in the original budget, would have been subject to a little more scrutiny from other town bodies. And now it's kind of like, we're not sneaking anything past them. There's nothing nefarious going on here, but it's just something that normally would have been vetted, and if these were smaller numbers, I'd be more comfortable with that. But we're at least now talking at a bare minimum of $2.6 million. And that's just, I'm uncomfortable, even though there will be less of a quarter end or year end spending frenzy, which might seem like we're not doing anything bad. Bad is not the right word, but we also are spending a lot during the year. And I don't want that to get lost at the end saying, oh, we're only spending, like, we have spent a lot of surplus already. And it makes me very uncomfortable to just keep spending it like it's house money.
If I could I respond through the chair? We did have a conversation that was productive about this at Finance Committee, and so I just wanted to say, yes, I do agree that this is a unique year where, and I know we said that, but I just want to state for the record that the surplus, the balances that we saw in personnel were due to circumstances that I do truly believe are unique to this year, as well as the insurance balances. You will see favorability when we speak next week and in the Q4 in the utility budget as well, given that we had a really warm winter and some assumptions that we had the town had about the rates were more favorable for us. So it's a good situation to be in that regard. I do take your point. I understand your point. I do think that for the purpose of the public, the transparency in that is also available when you review the financial reports, because even when you look at the detailed financial reports, you can see the original budget and the revised budget. So you'd be able to see the variance and drill down in the detail if you had any questions about what happened from day one to the final.
And I'm not questioning the transparency. I'm just saying, other town, if we had said we wanted to spend more money in technology, I'm sure somebody on the Board of Finance would have had a question about scheduling and, or, you know, somebody would have had a question about it. Or maybe they wouldn't have, but we're just not giving them the opportunity. And again, it's just a significant amount of money.
Just follow up with that really quick. We did actually go over that with the town bodies. So they knew from our quarterly reports and also through the budget process that we were going to be expending these dollars as a reduction to next year's ask. So so they were aware that we were going to be doing this as we went through the budget process with all of the town bodies. And it was part of the Mr. Testani's presentation.
That's fair, and I know there are certain items that we pointed to that we said we were funding with this year's surplus, but I don't have a separate schedule of, was that $2.6 million? Or at the time, I don't know what the dollar amount was at the time that we said that we pre-funded. So I have to guess that the number is higher now than it was before.
It was 2.5, because that's what we got after Q2. So as we went into that process, it was 2.5.
Okay, and I believe, and I don't know where that schedule reconciles with what we had in finance, but I think we were looking at a number that had 3.9 on it. Wasn't there a schedule with 3.9? Sorry, I'm referencing something we don't have.
Meaning for including the utility balances, correct, yeah. However, even at the point of time in Q2, when we prepared the budget, as we typically do, we took the town rates and we went through the assumptions, right, no, yeah. And we were still in the middle of winter, so we still don't know where we'll land fully in the utility budget. We've had, many months of experience, but we still have yet to see. Hopefully, we won't have those really, really hot days in May and June that we've had for the last few years. So anyway, yes, the point is the utilities were not factored into that at that time. But this part of this transfer proposal is not including those funds.
Through just a follow up to Mr. Peterson, is whatever you guys are talking about available in your meeting backup on the website? Was it posted? Whatever documents you're referencing?
The discussion that we had in Finance Committee, certainly we will have minutes of that, and it's been recorded. The number that Ms. Laborious is talking about right now, I don't know was is in what she presented to us at the meeting, the 3.9 million, which is in essence the amount of money we would have in surplus had we made no transfers at all.
Correct.
Which I then view as the total amount of money we had to reallocate. Which is, if I had to, we were guessing about this, I didn't have the numbers in front of me, that's almost half of what we asked for.
Can I restate that? So let me just restate that. I apologize because I just want to clarify what Mr. Peterson just said. 3.9 it would be the surplus if we just froze everything as we assumed it at a certain point in time. Every year, when you build a budget, you're building a budget at a point in time, and all of these things happen throughout the year. Osborne bathroom's more expensive, a pipe bursts, lights go out. Like, that's part of your assumption is for the knowns and the unknowns at a given point in time. So in the past, we had surpluses in utilities that we used to front cover a lot of those tier 1, 2, tier 2, 3 projects that are on the maintenance schedule. I don't want to say waterfall because I don't want people to get confused. So that is a budgeting strategy that we've had where we deflate the capital and major maintenance project investments. We have a multi-year cycle, and we have traditionally funded that with the balances that occurred within that major classification, which is an approach to do to budgeting within the major classification 6, which is the maintenance and utilities budget. So it wouldn't have necessarily been 3.9 because those wouldn't have required transfers in the past. It wouldn't be thought of necessarily as a surplus, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Mrs. Yes, it does make sense. However, it's still a lot of money.
Yes.
Mrs. Vitale?
I agree that the surplus that we saw, and I won't rehash why, but I think it's also important, again, just to say, to your point, Ms. Jacobson, that this surplus that we are spending now enabled us and other town bodies for our ask for next year to be lower. We would have been putting forth potentially a higher budget than we did. The instructional materials alone that this board just approved.
Mr. Peterson?
And I would just stress, if members of other bodies are watching, we're not really instituting new programs here. We're doing overdue or urgent maintenance. We're pre-buying stuff, as has been said. This is not, we're not creating cliffs with any of this money.
Yeah, $1 million alone was outlined specifically as dedicated. Instead of being 2.6 next year, we dropped it to 1.6. $1 million alone was dedicated to IT items alone, so specifically. But you are correct, but thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Because I have a few just before anyone else. No? Keeping on to capital for a second, we had done $600,000 in January, so the status of those Chromebooks, the 1,552 that were contained in the servers and the Wi-Fi, did we get all those?
They were purchased. I don't know if they're in hand, but they were contracted for, and I do believe we've if we haven't received them, I know we're receiving them imminently, so within this, by mid-May, if we haven't already received them.
Okay. Do you happen to know, and you probably don't know, but do you know how many Chromebooks are in this $435,000 for capital now is made up of many different items, Chromebooks, boards, docking stations, the dismissal manager. Do you happen to know how much of this is going towards Chromebooks? And if you don't, that's okay.
It's roughly 200, I want to say, but I apologize. I don't have the exact number. Okay. I did roll it all up.
Okay. The other question that I had was we're going to talk about this, I know, when we do the maintenance update, but is there any significant costs that are not captured here towards any of the other emergency items that have happened throughout the year, the water heater, the FLH stairs? I know you're saying now that we have more surplus, but I'm just confused in terms of this. If we just do this, are we in trouble with those?
Can I go back? 219,222 is the amount for the Chromebooks. I did have it. I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries.
So in the next board meeting, we've been asked for a facility update, and I know our Executive Director of Operations has prepared a document that shows what we bought with the original transfers, what we bought with this, will buy with the second round of transfers, and then the additional needs associated with the 1, 2, 3s with updates for what we would utilize for this year, as well as then going through the regular process where he refreshes that at year end for next year's projects. Yeah.
Be further end of your options, so to speak, after this.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. That's what I was looking. Go ahead. Sorry, Mrs. Vitale.
But I think just in terms of some of the repairs that had to be done, we're just covered through the existing department, that there's no unseen, oh my goodness, we're going to have $100,000 for stairs.
That's correct.
That's been covered.
I apologize.
already.
The third piece I left out that Mr. Papageorge has done in that document is including any of the normal things that, not normal, but things that happened in the year that he funded internally by increasing or decreasing lines. So he'll share that with you at the facility update.
And that happens, all the time.
The last question I have was, I'd like to get an update on the state funding that we received for this year, fiscal year 23, the $75,000, and where we are with that revenue.
Sure, thanks. I'll just give you a quick timeline. On July 22nd, we completed the allocation implementation form. We're working with Julie Wilson, who is it's Julia Wilson, Ms. Wilson, who is the Assistant Chief Officer with the Environmental Group at the state. On January 30th, my office received the scope and estimate as a result of kind of a long procurement process for the scoreboard. We sent that over to the state partners on 2/3, which included the scope of work, concept of design, certificate of insurance, term sheet, as well as a risk assessment document. We are just waiting for coordination with the town on a resolution document. We had sent that over to the auditor, which I think that wasn't the appropriate party to receive it. And so now the chief financial officer is working on getting that resolution document finalized so that we can get that over to the state. The resolution document is stating, we gave them a sample copy of what they'd need. It's just the city clerk certifying that the first select woman has the authority to enter into the contract. So that's the last piece that we're waiting for to have the approval process and receive the funding.
And have we been in touch with them, and are we going to execute that?
Yes, we've been in touch with them, and they anticipate, I don't know yet if they have to put it on the agenda for the next Board of Selectmen meeting, and I should have that information very soon. So I'd be happy to share that out as part of the Friday packet as an update, the time frame for having that happen.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's a town issue at this point?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have. Does anyone have anything else? No? Okay. Public comment on this item, budget transfers? All right, back to the board. All in favor? Mrs. Vitale, Mrs. Gerber, Mrs. Guernsey, Mrs. Jacobson, Mr. Ace. Oh, sorry. Motion passes unanimously. Okay. First reading of policy 6140 curriculum and policy 6140 curriculum I should say AR after that, I believe. Sorry, so there's going to be an edit there. Curriculum administrative regulations, enclosure number 3 and 4. So, Mrs. Maxon Kennelly.
Sure. So this is enclosure number 3. And actually, thanks to Ms. Jacobson for driving this change. What we really wanted to include in here is what happens at the state keeps changing. And every time the state changes, we have to keep coming back to this policy to change it. And the point is we have to abide by it. There's not a choice, there's not debate. And so it seemed more efficient to simply change the policy to say the curriculum will be reflective of this specific state statute 10-16B. So that's the reason for those curriculum changes, and I just want to explain why you do also have the regs. If you look at the last, I believe it's the last sentence, of the regs, the administrative regs dated to us shall not be revised without prior approval of the Board of Education. And because the policy changed, it necessitated a few changes to the administrative regs. We didn't even really talk about them aside from getting the assurance from Dr. Zavajanzik that these were the changes he needed. And so, but that's why I wanted to explain, because normally this is not something that the board is approving, and that's why this one specifically is. And if anyone has questions now, happy to take it.
Mr. Peterson?
Thank you very much. The paragraph directly below the bullets, Fairfield Public Schools, please remove that apostrophe.
In the past, I have cleaned up grammar egregious errors just with Ms. Brown. If you want to do it by amendment, we can include a little lesson at the same time, but otherwise, we can just get it changed.
Anyone else? All right. Anyone have anything on the AR, just because that is a separate piece of this? No? All right. All right. First reading of policy 5118.1, homeless children and youth. Mrs. Maxon Kennelly.
Once again, this is the recommendation of staff that rather than all of these bullet points, that if you look in the redlined version, page C, the whole policy is being now boiled down to that paragraph, and this was on the recommendation of staff.
Mr. Peterson?
Sorry, I don't normally do this. In the new text, where it says at the very end, in the event of conflict between federal and/or state law, do we traditionally put that in? I kind of had thought in other policies it was just understood. I mean, I have no real issue with it, but for consistency's sake.
No, I'm sensitive to trying to be consistent. This was something, I can't remember what we said about the word conflict. I know, I agree that it should be understood, but Mr. Mancusi appears ready to speak to the topic.
Yeah, Rob Mancusi, Executive Director of Special Education. This is the model policy from Shipman. This is the recommended replacement that we, that we bring forward to you.
Again, it's fine. I have no problem with it. It's just manifestly true. It's so manifestly true, we don't have to put it in there. But if Shipman wants to put it in there, I'm fine.
Next one, first reading for deletion of policy 6142, basic instructional program. Mrs. Max Kanoy.
So this is where we don't, and we have not been able to get an answer on why we have this policy in the first place, to be honest with you. It is entirely redundant, not that it's verbatim the same to what the curriculum policy is intended to do. So this was just us deciding, wherever possible, we'd like to get rid of redundancy because there's always the chance that when you change one, you forget to do the cross-reference. And so, in essence, we didn't think this added anything to the district. So, thus our recommendation for it to be deleted.
Okay. Sure. Mrs. Gerber.
I'm sorry, could we just go back? I apologize. I was looking it up on my phone. So right now, at the end of the revision to the 5118.1, it says the board authorizes the administration to establish regulations setting forth procedures necessary and so forth. So that means we do not have administrative regs right now regarding that. I mean, I'm saying we don't. I don't see them posted here now. So they're going to actually set up administrative regs to go along with this?
So you're talking about the new language?
Yes.
Correct. So they never create the regs unless policy requests that they do
Right.
so. So they have not been created yet. They'll be created upon passing of the policy.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. Approval of minutes. Recommend a motion that the Board of Education approve the April 25th, 2023 special and regular meeting minutes. Can I get a motion, please? Mr. Peterson? Mr. Cotter? Mrs. Vitale? Is the second. It's late. We're going to start having some fun here. Any questions on the minutes? No? All right. All in favor? Motion passes unanimously minus Mrs. Chrissy, who stepped out, so we'll call that. Yep, thank you. Mrs. Kelly, sorry. Mrs. Kelly, I'm sorry, Mrs. Kelly. All right, superintendent's report. Oh, sorry. What? It's one motion. Yes. It was one motion. Superintendent's report?
Fairfield Public Schools is pleased to welcome Dr. Nicole Danishevsky, sorry, Nicole, it's late, as our Executive Director of K-12 Mathematics and STEM. An educator with 25 years of experience, Nicole began her career teaching 7th grade math at Fairfield Woods Middle School. Looking to expand her professional path, her career took her to North Haven Public Schools, where she taught high school math and assumed leadership roles within the district. For the past 11 years, she has been the coordinator of mathematics, professional development, teacher evaluation, and district testing in the West Haven Public Schools. She brings a wealth of knowledge in mathematics, curriculum, and professional development to Fairfield. She exemplifies a love of teaching and learning, coupled with a belief that all children can learn and become mathematicians. We look forward to the work with Dr. Danishevsky, to ensure that our students receive the tools they need to succeed in math and STEM throughout their school career and beyond. Please welcome Nicole, Fairfield Public Schools. After a very competitive process, she was head and shoulders the person that we knew would fit nicely with our team here at the administrative offices, but also to lead the district well into the future. So we're happy to have her, and we're lucky to have her.
Oh, welcome. Thank you for staying to the end of this meeting for that round of applause for you. So you've got the stamina already. Got it. Welcome. Look forward to working with you. All right.
Just a few things and then a few updates, because I know we're getting late. First and foremost, as everyone is aware, I'd like to wish all our teachers and staff, support staff, happy Teacher Appreciation Week. We thank all our educators for the important work they do every day here in Fairfield for our students and their families. I would be remiss if we didn't acknowledge that tomorrow is School Nurse Appreciation Day. All our school nurses make a difference in the lives of our students today and every day by ensuring our students are healthy, safe, and come to school ready to learn. So thank you to our school nurses, and we will acknowledge those folks tomorrow. A couple of events that occurred that I think are worth noting. Burr Elementary School on Friday held a trash-in show to inspire creativity and promote reusing items to reduce waste. I saw the amazing pictures. The creativity by our students and staff were cute and also very important message that we're sending and teaching our children. I do want to thank all the folks who supported the Ward and Ludlow High School drama students who entertained the community with 2 exceptional performances of Fiddler on the Roof and Rent. So congratulations to all those who worked behind the scenes as well as on stage to present those 2 performances. Our Walter Fitzgerald campus students have created a podcast, if everyone is called WFC Wolves. Recently, the students interviewed Police School Resource Officer Tiffany Bennett and their new restorative program specialist, Mr. Milton Petway. Steward of Trees and Tomlinson student who I got to meet, Ryan Romeo, met with the first select woman, Brenda Kupchak, to acknowledge Arbor Day in front of the newly planted white oak tree in front of Tomlinson School. Ryan is a starch advocate for the environment throughout the state by empowering children to take action. So Ryan is going to be one heck of a force to be reckoned with. He has a mission to get a tree planted at every school, and we have committed to Ryan and Mr. Papa George that we will get a tree planted at every school in the next couple of months. So thanks to Ryan. Ludlow students and staff had the great honor of hearing from Holocaust survivor Eugene Ginter for Holocaust Remembrance Day. And as we heard in a previous meeting, but I do want to say thank you to all the students and staff, over 400 from Ward and Ludlow who traveled to Disney World to share their talents on the national stage. Band, choir, and orchestra students had the opportunity to perform in Disney Springs, participate in festivals, and engage in music clinics taught by award-winning Disney musicians. So just want to recognize all the hard work that it takes to go and perform out of state. I think that's important. A couple of updates. We are in the final stages of the North Stratfield principal search. We interviewed several candidates in 2 rounds of interviews. The committee has provided their final scores, and we will be working to identify the candidate and fill that vacancy in the next week or so. So we are excited. It was a good process. We had some candidates that had a wide range of district experiences, but I think the final 3 candidates are all top-notch educators that could lead North Stratfield School. We have begun the process for the AP positions at the elementary level. Last week, we had a number of committees vetting all the internal candidates. As you're all aware, contractually, we're obligated to provide an interview to all internal candidates. We had 28 internal candidates that applied that were qualified for the position. They were vetted in committees made up of all the school principals, district level leadership, and now we have begun to narrow down the number of external candidates to a pool that is manageable, that we believe are top quality, that will move on to the first round then of official interviews with the internal candidates to compete against each other. So that will begin next Thursday, that process. There will be a second round beyond that prior to then convening with the principals and central office staff that participate in the selection process. Any questions?
Mr. Peterson.
Yeah, just a comment. Can I just say that it sounds like Walter Fitzgerald is the coolest school. I love hearing from them here at the table, and I love that it gives me a warm feeling that so much interesting stuff is happening there. I'm really enjoying hearing it.
Shall we set up a tour? I mean, we
think
haven't been
that's a
through
great
since
idea.
it opened. I mean, if Mr. Testani is open to it at some point,
Absolutely.
it's something we have to post as an agenda and whatnot, but we haven't been there since in a while, so.
I
Let's
think
set it
the
up, man. Let's go see the bees.
I think it's important just to hear from the students, the experience that they're having up there is quite different, I think, than previous experiences they've had. And it's quite nice to see them engaged in the learning process and really connected to the school and the staff. So that's a testament to Amanda, Rob, and the leadership that's being provided up there.
All right, well, maybe we can work with the principal and get a couple dates that might work for her, that would work, that we could come on by.
I would love that, and we're looking at, and Angelus is working closely with some of the food service funds that can only be dedicated to renovating the kitchen there so it will have a functioning cafeteria like our other high schools for next year.
Okay. Mrs. Gerber?
Quick question. I don't know if this is to the chair or through the chair to Mr. Testani. Thank you so much for giving us the district improvement plan update memorandum and the Friday packet. I'm just wondering, are we going to be having a presentation or discussion at some point in a future meeting?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Absolutely.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Okay. Open board comment. Oh, I missed one. Sorry, liaisons. Mrs. Vitale? Anyone have any committee
No.
reports? Mrs. Vitale?
Just Fairfield Cares annual meeting, May 17th. I just encourage the public and board members to check it out. It's on their website. Dr. Eli Leibowitz, speaking about childhood anxiety, highly regarded. He's spoken before in the district, very helpful to parents, so I just encourage everybody to check it out.
Mr. Issa?
Yeah, just want to give a quick update from Facilities Committee. As many of you know, we've been working for a few months now on the use and rental process, and I'm just passing out a sheet to everybody now that is where we stand at this point. So when we started this process, we looked at who was using the building, what were the classifications of different renters, wanting to narrow and simplify that. So what we did was we came up with categories of Fairfield residents, groups and individuals, nonprofits, for-profits, and out-of-town users. And then there is a church group category. And then what we did was we listed, while there's no fee for it, town organizations like Parks and Rec and PTAs. And what we did was we did an analysis, or Mr. Papa George did an analysis of the renters that have been using the facilities and comparing what they were paying, oftentimes nothing, to these new rates that are before you. We then had Mr. Papa George's office run calculations and came up with a decent number, which showed that the in-kind, if we want to call it an in-kind match per se to the town, for example, like Parks and Rec programs, were north of $600,000 using these rates, not what it would be if it were a private organization or whatever using the building. Now, knowing that we are a partner with the town, we wanted to have this number because we want to be able to use this number to show, what we are providing as a partner to the town. So I think it's going to be important in the future. And we talked about it with Finance Committee about potentially having this type of number and our partnership when we do budget presentations and talk to other town bodies, so they know what they're getting from us in exchange for using the facilities. We then sent these numbers to the Finance Committee, and I can let Mr. Peterson talk on that. They reviewed them, and basically what we did here, they agreed with the proposed numbers that we sent to them. And it's important to note that we're not trying to turn into a rental company. This is not to become a facility rental business for the district. But what we want to do is we want to be more keen on recouping some of our costs and at least covering those costs. And what we tried to do was come up with a balance that, people that live in town, people that pay taxes, nonprofits that serve our families and our kids that use our facilities, are paying a fee, but a reduced and fair fee, and that sometimes there will be situations where it'll look like, we're kind of not making money, and in other instances, it'll make up for it. And one of the things that used to happen was there was two different categories. So there was a building use fee and then a custodial fee. And what we've tried to do here is simplify it so there is just one fee. So it's not broken out. We're not worrying about staff trying to calculate. If you rent and use a facility based on your category, and we'll get to the administrative regs, this is what you'll pay. And in the long run, when we ran these numbers, it came out almost to $250,000 of revenue that we're not realizing now. So that is a potential number that we would hope to watch and see. So the idea is that the superintendent and Mr. Papageorge implement these in the new fiscal year starting July 1st, and that we monitor this for a year and see where it lies and see how it compares to what we've budgeted. We're not proposing that the board make any adjustments based on this because we don't have the actual track record yet. So what we want to do is we want for the next fiscal year to monitor it and see where our number winds up, and hopefully it winds up being more of a revenue source for future budgets. Now, I consulted with Mrs. Maxon-Cannelli regarding the policy on this, and the policy really is pretty clear. It reverts to the administrative regs. So in our last meeting, which was yesterday, or I think yesterday, we met with Mr. Papageorge and the superintendent, and the committee gave a lot of feedback on the current administrative regs and what we would like to see, changed. They will be working on those because ultimately they lie with the superintendent. But I think there was a real productive discussion, and there will be, some drafts made. It's important to note that the district is moving towards a new scheduling system and a new software, but at this point is not ready to roll out. So what the committee's consensus was, and the committee members can correct me if I'm wrong, was to adjust the administrative regs now to line up with what we're going to be doing, knowing that this new system likely will not be live July 1st, with the intention of having a draft ready, so when the new system goes live, the regs will reflect that. And some of the really cool things about this new system are it will be monitoring, so it will know when you make a reservation if you have an account, if your insurance liability paperwork is up to date, what classification you are, and when you make the reservation, it will actually take payment right then and there. So in theory, it should streamline a lot of this, reduce staff time, and hopefully make it better. So that's my update. It was long, I apologize, but we did feel that it was important for the board. While this is not something that the board votes on, it is something that we want to keep you informed on.
I have a question, Mr. Asa. When you say town organizations, I know you meant Park and Rec, but is there any others that fall into that category?
So the administrative regs kind of recognize that, so it's like the schools.
Oh.
So if the schools need to use the building, so it's outlined in there, but mostly it's the schools,
PTAs.
Parks and Rec, PTAs.
Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts, are those following under the nonprofits?
So technically, it's a funny thing. Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts fall under Parks and Rec. So Parks and Rec is actually the master charter organization for all scouts in town. Girl Scouts is different. So technically, if Parks and Rec books a reservation for a building for Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, there is no fee because it's Parks and Rec. Girl Scouts, there are Girl Scouts that are currently paying, and that we did not feel should be. So in the administrative regs, the plan is to have the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts listed, broken out as part of these exempt organizations.
Thank you. And any reason why the church groups are just listed here as like 10 grand a year?
Yep, so in the current administrative regs, there is a cap on the annual reservations of $10,000, and we recommended keeping that. And one of the nice things about the 2 church groups that use our facilities now, we used to have more, but we're down to 2. And those are guaranteed revenue for the district. That is great. They use it weekly. And we feel that continuing the idea of giving them a capped rate, because it's guaranteed. When you run the rates here of what it would be, and if they were using it 52 weeks a year for 4 hours or whatever, it comes to like $15,000. So we didn't feel that it was worth jacking that rate up and potentially losing an organization like that.
Is there no benefit to having a hourly rate for them in case we get more interest in the future, or is that not?
There would be. This is for groups that reserve for the year. Yeah, so if they wanted, if any kind of group like that wanted to use it, they would fall under the different categories.
Mrs. Guernsey?
I'm just curious, I don't want you to have to go into too much detail, but looking at the 501c3 organizations and thinking about how they're serving our students, I'm not sure which ones are going to be impacted by these maybe pay hikes. I'm not sure how that structure changed. But could you just speak to the type of notification that they would have? Because a lot of these organizations are putting out membership fees, right? You know, how does that built into?
So reservations have been coming in for the last many months, and every single reservation has been told that come July 1st, there will be a new fee structure. We did not know that fee structure, but we did notify them. There was some, a bit with certain people and organizations of kind of trying to think if they got all their reservations in, they'd be grandfathered. That is not the case, and everybody was notified. So when we did look at the overall group organizations, there wasn't really anything that stood out to us, or I believe Finance Committee, that was like detrimental or earth-shattering.
Mrs. Maxon Kennelly.
I'll try to whip through my questions quickly. So just to be clear, whether it's weekend, weekday, whether it's after 11 p.m. or not, there's no extra maintenance. It's the one fee.
Yeah, we used, so the custodial fees are generally $45 and $65, depending on day, weekend, night, et cetera. We tried to incorporate when we figured these rates of the higher rate. Again, if you have you have a variation of weekends versus weekdays, so we tend to have more weekday reservations. Let's say, for example, in a building, we're going to make out a little bit better on those than we do on the weekends, but we use the higher rate in calculating our rates.
I'll trust you on that. And I was hoping for a comparison number. So you're saying with this new pay scale, you're estimating $250,000 in revenue. How would you compare that to the current?
I don't have what the current budget number is, but it's Mr. Papa George, do you have that off the top of your head? I don't know. It's in the budget book as revenue. It's in the 100. It's 100 and change something. So this in theory would be potentially more than 200,000 in addition to what we budget now.
All right, thank you. Just to be clear, because this was a big topic of conversation when we did this in policy like a decade ago, is there any grandfathering? Is there any discretion on the part, for example, of the first select person or whatever to just say, I pick you to get this, but everybody else, this is your pay scale?
So one of the issues that we've run into over the years is that there was this supposed list from former administrations and whatnot. The idea of this is we are starting fresh. And there is no special treatment. There is no, organization that is on this list per se. Now, it is important to note that we did discuss in committee that our plan is once we get a new draft of this to make sure that we do inform the First Select Woman's office and also Mr. Calabrese with Parks and Rec, just so they're fully aware and in the loop. But in speaking, and Mr. Papa George can correct me if I'm wrong, in speaking to the First Select Woman's office, they're not really aware of where the list came from or anything. So I think everyone, I would hope, is eager to start fresh. Obviously, the organizations that haven't been paying for a decade, the idea behind this is that they're really not going to be paying that much more, but a little bit as a fair share.
No, absolutely. No, I completely agree. I think that clean slate is a great idea. My last question, just as a Parks and Rec warning, just please be aware that you're going to need to have a plan in place for mixed residence teams. So, because I know that's something that Parks and Rec deals with in terms of when people are trying to get involved in using our fields for soccer or what have you, and if there is so much as one out-of-town resident on a team's roster, they pay the out-of-town fee, and I just wanted to put that on your radar as something to anticipate.
Yeah, it's something we discussed within the administrative regs and how to handle that. And some of that, not that specifically, but there is some bit of the honor system in some of the reservations. Now, granted, understand that the only fields that we're doing are the turf field, two high schools. Parks and Rec controls everything else for reservations. So ultimately, there isn't a ton there of space in the schedule for people to rent it, but that we are aware of that.
Mrs. Gerber.
I just wanted to report on PTA Council. They met tonight. Obviously, I was not there, but I did get an update. They have provided a $1,000 grant to the Burr Odyssey to the Mind team to help them with their trip to nationals. And tomorrow night at Woods Middle School, there will be the Connecticut PTA Reflections Awards ceremony, 7 p.m. in the Woods Auditorium. And we have, if I counted correctly, 24 Fairfield students who received recognition in reflections.
Mr. Peterson?
Thank you. Several things. I won't go over, we did talk about facilities rental in Finance Committee. We largely approved the general sense that we should not be a profit-making enterprise, but we should absolutely categorize what we are providing the town in terms of resources and to be a resource for the town at large. We talked about the surplus issues that we talked about earlier. We also got an update on outstanding RFPs. I understand that the food service RFP will be awarded sometime in the near future. One thing that I did learn at our meeting, we had talked about getting a health insurance RFP, putting that out, see whether the State 2.0 plan is still cost-effective for us. But given the schedule, it proved to not be efficient to do it this year, so we may stick with State 2.0 for another cycle and then put out again to keep that, again, to make the comparison. In terms of Board of Finance, I wasn't able to make it the last meeting, but fortunately our chair and Ms. Laborious were. They approved the transfer of $355,000 in federal COVID reimbursement to our use. We had asked for that, and back in May, March, we had spoken to the Board of Finance saying we would like to apply that to security updates, which we've received an update on in executive session. And then Special Project Standing Building Committee has not met for a couple of months, so that's it.
Mrs. Maxon-Kennelly.
Just very briefly, and this is more information to the public. The board has heard me say this several times, that policy is taking up. We're now trying to really devote full time to the grading policy to see what we can achieve for the end of this school year. Our next meeting was moved from the 23rd to the 22nd. And I believe Mrs. Jacobson has called for a midnight oil meeting of staying till we get it done. We'll see how much gas is in the tank, but just as information to the public, that is something we will be doing. And then secondly, for Parks and Rec, I actually wanted to turn it over to Mrs. Jacobson because it's something that the board has received several emails about regarding the fields at Roger Ludlow, which of course is part of the Fairfield Ludlow campus as well. And I was hoping Mrs. Jacobson could speak to a meeting I wasn't invited to, but that's okay, with these concerned parents, just to speak to a little bit more what's going on with the field there.
I'll do my best to remember. Mr. Testani was there with me. So we did attend, and I think the best course at this point is to really work through Mr. Calabrese, since it's really his project, but just overall, There was consultants there who had shown very explicit designs around lighting and how things could be moved or not moved, and it was very technical in nature. Obviously, there's strong advocacy to try and make something fit there, but there's all these regulations about light and all of that. So I think how it was left is that they were going to possibly go back and look at subpar lighting, but then that has to figure out, like for Anthony especially, like how, if he can't do night games, how does that impact revenue? So there still would be so many questions around that. So unless you took it differently at the end, it was they were going to kind of look at something, but I don't have any definitive answers. And I think right now that it really rests with Parks and Rec at this point, and which direction they're going to ultimately go in.
I think the big piece that I took away with was Athletic Director Todd Parnes really was advocating for more green space, so to speak. It's hard to get teams on the field. He was less concerned about a baseball field that could not play games, because that's what ultimately, if there was any baseball field considered, it would not be playable for competition. They could use it for practices, but it wouldn't be allowable for competition. And he was really advocating for more field space. So if they can get 2 fields on there, where he can get soccer, lacrosse, field hockey, and lights, that would be a benefit to the school, more so than a subpar baseball field that would have, as they said, suboptimal lighting.
Mrs. Kelly was there too.
And just as a quick follow-up, but just as a reminder to understand the framing of the argument, right now Ludlow freshmen and Ludlow JV baseball, where do they practice?
Off-site.
Right, so that there is a benefit to having it on campus. I definitely hear the point about the competition, and I definitely hear Mrs. Jacobson's point that this is back on Parks and Rec, and we'll see what Mr. Calabrese does with it. But just in terms of understanding the argument, those kids are being bussed every day for practice, never mind their games.
Correct.
Thank you.
If I could just add to that, one of the possible solutions they were talking about, if they could squeeze a non-regulation sized ball field in there and they could maybe do practices, they would still have to play games off-site. Just throwing that out.
Okay. Moving on to open board comment. Mr. Peterson.
Hi, thank you. Recognizing the hour, I'll try to keep this brief. I think it's appropriate, it's this Teacher Appreciation Week. I wanted to recognize a former teacher of mine, a woman by the name of Ann Pasco, who I only crossed over with my senior year of high school. It was the first year of the consolidated high schools here in town. And one of the promises of the consolidation was that a larger high school would be able to offer more programming. And so out of nowhere, she decided to offer Russian language course, which after having kind of suffered through French for many years and not really getting it, I jumped at the chance. This was 1987, so it was also highly topical and the thing that I was very much interested in. It was a small class. We had a fantastic time. And she arranged, and I still have no idea how, a trip for us to go to Leningrad and Moscow. So in the spring of 1988, at the tail end of the Cold War, I got to go behind the Iron Curtain and spend some time in Russia. It was an invaluable experience. The class in general was amazing, but it was a foundational experience for me, and I still have no idea how she organized that. It took several months to get an entry visa for the Soviet Union, so it was a process. And she was just a joy. Like spending time with her on that trip in particular was really remarkable. But now a lot of other people, I went on to college. I did my thing. I came back to town. I became a Board of Ed rep for the Stratfield PTA, and I found her again in this room because she was the FEA representative for many years. She actually did not remember my name right away, probably because she called me Ivan Petrovich back in 87, 88. But she remembered the hell out of that trip, and we had a nice time. But I wanted to recognize her. She died last week, suddenly, unexpectedly. It's a remarkable fact of how somebody in a small period of time can make such a huge difference. I mean, she was monumental in my school experience here in town. And so I just say Ochin Spasibi Na zdrowie.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Wonderful story. Anyone else? Mr. Asa? Top Yvonne.
Maybe I should just put the mic up. No, I just wanted to take a chance really quick to wish Christine Vitale a happy birthday. One of our fellow board members here at the table, spending her birthday evening at the
Thank
board
you.
table, so thank you.
Do you guys want to sing? We'll sing after. Mrs. Vitale.
Thank you for the birthday wishes, Mr. Asa. I attended the Holocaust Commemoration Program last week, and just want to thank our students who participated. We had a keynote speaker from Ludlow who spoke, the musicians from both high schools, Fairfield County Children's Choir. It was a heartbreakingly beautiful ceremony, and also our staff, Ms. Oliveri was there, Ms. Marta, Mr. Puglisi, and the social studies teachers from Ludlow. And it was just a reminder of seeing the town and our school district, together, and some of the wonderful things that we do to support other town programs. And also just happy Teacher Appreciation Week to all of our teachers.
I will just remind everyone that our next meeting, we will be at Tomlinson for our award ceremony. So just a reminder on our change of location for our next meeting. And I too wish to express gratitude to all of our educators today, this week, every day, here in Fairfield and around our world, for the time and dedication that you give to our kids and to our families and to our community. Couldn't be more honored to be with you and to serve with you, and to do everything I can to advocate for you as well. So we wish you the greatest week of treats and tacos and whatever else you might be getting, and happy National Teachers Week. Go ahead, Mr. Asa.
I forgot one more update. The Board of Selectmen appointed 3 individuals to the Air Conditioning Building Committee. So that is going to the RTM for approval. So we are hopefully on our way to getting that started.
Public comment? No. Motion to adjourn. Recommended motion at the regular meeting of the Board of Education adjourned. Yvonne gets it. Mr. Peterson. And seconded by Mrs. Rotelli. All in favor. And Mr. Peterson and Mr. Asa, if you could hang for 2 seconds.